Chapter 272. Mr. Mo, please check it. The yellow-robed man raised his chin and glanced at Su Zimo, indicating for him to check the materials and spirit stones in his storage bag. A faint smile appeared on Su Zimo's lips as he said in a seemingly casual manner, "Fellow Daoist, you sure are generous. Ordinary cultivators won't be able to fork out so many materials and spirit stones." The yellow-robed man's expression was unchanged and he did not explain, merely stating his request. After pondering for a moment, the yellow-robed man continued, "After this supreme-grade flying sword is refined, leave it with Mr. Mo first. Someone will come and retrieve it when the time comes. A year's time limit. Overdue will not be accepted." Su Zimo said indifferently. The sect competition was less than a year away. By then, he would have left the capital long ago. The yellow-robed man stood up and bade farewell, leaving with the scholarly man. After leaving Mo's spirit weapon workshop and walking to the main street, the yellow-robed man turned around and looked in the direction of Mo's spirit weapon workshop with interest, his eyes shining brightly. The yellow-robed man was the current emperor of Great Zhou. The scholarly man behind him was perfected Lord Mingzhe. If I hadn't seen it for myself, I would have found it hard to believe that someone who could refine a supreme-grade spirit weapon is such a young junior, the emperor lamented without concealing the admiration in his eyes. Perfected Lord Mingzhe nodded. Furthermore, that person's cultivation is indeed only at late-stage foundation establishment and he did not cultivate any cultivation technique to conceal his cultivation realm. There was no one else in the courtyard either. There were many mysteries surrounding Mo Ling. However, what the emperor was most curious about was the assassination attempt last night. Given Mo Ling's cultivation realm, it was almost certain death. How did he manage to survive for 10 breaths and even kill a perfected Jin Dan instead? Initially, the emperor had two guesses. First, Mo Ling cultivated some sort of cultivation technique to conceal his cultivation realm and his actual cultivation realm was at Jin Dan realm. Second, there was an expert hidden in Mo's spirit weapon workshop. The reason why the two of them came today was partly to take a look at Mo Ling and partly to resolve this mystery. However, after leaving Mo's spirit weapon workshop, the two of them were even more puzzled. Neither of these two speculations was consistent with the situation. Their visit was sudden. The two of them used their divine consciousness to carefully search Mo's spirit weapon workshop but did not find any trace of a third person. In other words, everything was back to square one. How did two Foundation Establishment cultivators and a black dog of the Foundation Establishment stage survive for 10 breaths under the full force of two Jin Dan immortals? Interesting. What an enigma. The emperor smiled and asked again, "What else did you discover?" Perfected Lord Mingzhe said deeply, "That black dog is not simple. Although it was sprawled far away and looked like it was about to fall asleep, I could sense that it was watching us the entire time." "Can you tell what kind of spirit demon it is?" "No. Perhaps it's a mutated spirit demon born from the union of two different species of spirit demons." The two of them chatted as they walked and soon arrived at the palace. At the entrance of the palace, a black-armored guard quickly walked over. Kneeling down on one knee, he reported in a deep voice, "Reporting to my king, this subordinate has already investigated Mo Ling's identity and background. The results are minimal." The emperor asked, "Oh? What did you find out? Tell me." The guard replied, 2 years ago, Mo Ling seemed to have appeared out of thin air outside the capital. Nobody saw how he arrived. That's all. That's all." The emperor chuckled. It's truly not easy for someone his age to have such a temperament and wisdom. "That's right," perfected Lord Mingzhe commented as well, "that lad has a calm temperament and is calm as a lake despite having a thunderstorm in his chest." The emperor continued, "Furthermore, that Su Zimo was chosen by Shui herself after all. If he's half, no, a tenth of Mo Ling, it's not impossible for them to become Dao companions." "Right, he couldn't have seen through our identities, right?" the emperor asked in a joking manner. "How is that possible?" Perfected Lord Mingzhe shook his head with a smile. If he could see through your identity with a single interaction, he wouldn't be a genius, but a monster incarnate. Chapter 273. Mo's Spirit Weapon Workshop. Nian Qi sat opposite Su Zimo and praised, "Young master, you're amazing. Even cultivators from other places are coming here because of your reputation." "How do you know that they're from other places?" Su Zimo asked with a smile. Nian Qi replied, "Mo's Spirit Weapon Workshop has already been open for 2 years. It's clear that the two of them don't know our rules by visiting us in the middle of this month. They're most likely not from the capital, but cultivators from other places." "Fu, you're really mistaken." Su Zimo smiled gently and shook his head. "Not only are they from the capital, they're from the palace." "Someone from the palace?" Nian Qi was shocked and probed, "Could they be royalty?" Su Zimo nodded. "The yellow-robed man in the lead is not simple. He has an aura of wealth that ordinary cultivators don't possess. He's so generous and offered 4 million superior-grade spirit weapons the moment he opened his mouth. Ordinary cultivators don't have that sort of capability." Nian Qi nodded as though he understood. Su Zimo continued, "Furthermore, there's an intimidating aura between his brows. Although he's trying to hide it, it's an aura that's condensed from being in a high position for a long time and is difficult to conceal." "Oh," Nian Qi revealed a look of realization and said, "No wonder I felt that the yellow-robed man's aura was extremely strong. Every single word and action of his was filled with authority." Nian Qi supported his chin with one arm and fell into deep thought, as though he had thought of something difficult. Su Zimo smiled and did not disturb him. Dipping his finger in the tea, he wrote 2 words on the table and stood up to leave. "The royal family's surname is Ji, but that person said that his surname is Zhou. Could he be lying?" Nian Qi was deep in thought as he murmured, "Zhou, Zhou, Zhou." After a while, Nian Qi's gaze shifted and landed on the table by accident. He caught sight of the 2 words that had yet to dry up, emitting a faint tea fragrance. "Tianzi." Nian Qi exclaimed as he vaguely realized something. After the emperor's announcement appeared, the royal city indeed calmed down. No one dared to provoke the imperial family at this time. On the other hand, Mo's Spirit Weapon Workshop's status in the capital was rising day by day, and so was its reputation. The auction at the beginning of every month would attract many perfected Jin Dan cultivators. Most of them were late Jin Dan cultivators and perfected Jin Dan cultivators. These Jin Dan perfected masters were either very powerful or had strong backgrounds. Otherwise, they would not have been able to accumulate so many spirit stones. A few months later, there were even foreign cultivators who traveled thousands of kilometers to bid for a supreme-grade spirit weapon in Mo's Spirit Weapon Workshop. Naturally, the guesses and rumors about Imo Ling's identity, appearance, and background had never stopped. Many cultivators claimed that they had seen Imo Ling and were proud of him. However, their descriptions of Imo Ling were different. There were all kinds of strange versions. There were only a few pieces of information that were acknowledged by the masses. First, Mr. Imo was a perfected Jin Dan cultivator with extraordinary strength. Apart from the descriptions of some cultivators, the reason for that was because of the assassination attempt a few months ago was also because of that night. Second, Mr. Imo had a unique spirit gathering technique that had an extremely high success rate. Everyone agreed with that point as well. Furthermore, everyone even gave that spirit gathering technique a name, Imo Clan's Spirit Gathering Technique. Third, Mr. Imo was definitely one of the people that could not be offended in the capital. Even the Emperor of Great Zhou had specially announced that he was a talent. Even True Fire Weapon Workshop, which was backed by True Fire Sect, suffered a huge setback because of this. Who in the capital of Great Zhou would dare to offend Mr. Imo? Furthermore, anyone who offended Mr. Mo could forget about customizing supreme-grade spirit weapons in Mo's Spirit Weapon Workshop. Su Zimo could not be bothered to explain the rumors and ignored them. Of course, he did not intend to hide his identity either. It was just that he had been living in seclusion for the past 2 years and rarely showed himself. That was why he gave off an extremely mysterious vibe. After 2 years of tough cultivation, Su Zimo's gains were immense. Due to the large amount of spirit stones, Su Zimo's cultivation realm was already close to perfected foundation establishment. Although that cultivation speed was a little terrifying, it was within reason. It was already extremely fortunate for foundation establishment cultivators to have sufficient middle-grade spirit stones for their cultivation. However, Su Zimo had an endless supply of superior-grade spirit stones for his cultivation and was naturally able to achieve twice the results with half the effort. Another aspect was his weapon refinement. To outsiders, Su Zimo could only refine a single supreme-grade spirit weapon a month. However, in reality, Su Zimo would refine a supreme-grade spirit weapon every afternoon to continue honing his skills. As time passed by and he practiced continuously, Su Zimo's weapon refinement skills became more and more proficient. He was already at the pinnacle of perfection and it was difficult for him to improve further. At that moment, Su Zimo also realized that it was as difficult as ascending to the heavens to refine a perfect spirit weapon. Success was only possible when one's skills, mentality, environment and various other factors were combined. Since it was perfect, it meant that there could not be any flaws from the first step of weapon refinement right from the selection of materials. There could not be any mistakes all the way until the final quenching. Otherwise, even the slightest mistake would not be considered perfect. Initially, Su Zimo intended to refine a set of perfect-grade flying swords to release sword formations. But now, seeing that things were not going to work out, Su Zimo could only settle for the next best thing, a set of supreme-grade flying swords. Of course, what was second in Su Zimo's eyes was the best in the eyes of others. A single supreme-grade spirit weapon would attract countless top Jin Dan perfected beings to fight for it. A set of supreme-grade flying swords would most likely lead to a huge battle. This day, Su Zimo walked out of his room with a faint smile on his face. There was still more than a month to the sect competition and the essence energy of the dragon egg within his body was finally refined and absorbed by his body. He had attained greater mastery of the organs refinement section. The chi of his 5 organs circulated endlessly, nourishing his skin, flesh, tendons, bones and marrow, forming a small cycle within his body. Prior to this, when Su Zimo attained lesser mastery of the organs refinement section, he released his power of blood chi and attacked with all his might. In Dongling Valley, he even killed the blood-robed youth who was at 4 Meridian Foundation establishment. But now, Su Zimo estimated that even without releasing his demonic chi or channeling his bloodline, he could suppress 4 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators with his physical strength alone. If he channeled his bloodline, it would be more than enough to suppress 5 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators. If he released his blood chi at the same time, Su Zimo's combat strength would be even more frightening. Of course, that was only in terms of strength. After all, the battlefield was ever-changing and there were too many factors that could affect the outcome. As for refining the essence energy of the dragon egg, it could be said that he had resolved the hidden danger of being hunted down by dragons. Prior to this, Su Zimo did not even dare to step out of the capital. But now, Su Zimo felt as though he was relieved of a burden and freed from his shackles. He could not help but be in a great mood. "Young master, what are you so happy about?" Nian Qi hugged his knees and sat on the grass, tilting his head and asking with watery eyes. For the past 3 years, it was rare for Nian Qi to see Su Zimo smile as such. Su Zimo waved his hand. "Let's go out for a walk and get some fresh air." "Sure." Nian Qi clapped and leaped up from the ground with a bright smile. Chapter 274. Ever since Nian Qi moved in, this was the first time the two of them were going out together. 3 years had passed and there were not many changes in the capital. The only difference was that the number of cultivators increased significantly as the sect competition approached and people came and went. After 3 years, Nian Qi's hair was still yellow and curly, looking messy. However, she had grown increasingly beautiful. Slender and elegant, her skin was whiter than snow and was so tender that it seemed like water could be squeezed out of it. Even though Su Zimo could not be said to be extremely handsome, he had delicate features and a steady aura. His green robes fluttered in the wind, making him stand out from the crowd and exuding a unique charm. The woman was beautiful while the man was elegant. The man and woman walked on the long streets of the capital like a golden couple, attracting everyone's attention. Isn't that Nian Chi's maidservant from Mo's spirit weapon workshop? Some of the cultivators in the crowd had seen Nian Chi before and recognized her. It really seems to be her. Who's that person beside her? He looks unfamiliar. I've never seen him before. I've got it. A cultivator said hatefully, that green-robed cultivator must be so close to fellow Daoist Nian Chi because he wants to get close to Mr. Mo. That person is so scheming. Yes, that must be the case. Everyone was enlightened and nodded in agreement. That's a good idea. To think that that person would beat us to it. Even though there was a commotion around them, Su Zimo and Nian Chi's ears were extremely sharp and they could still hear the discussions. Young master, they're so stupid. Nian Chi whispered and pursed her lips into a smile. Right then, a timid voice sounded from the crowd. Actually, I have a feeling that that green-robed cultivator might be Mr. Mo as well. The moment the voice sounded, it attracted a wave of ridicule. Fellow Daoist, you're an outsider, right? If you don't know, listen more and speak less lest you embarrass yourself. Fellow Daoist, don't tell me you don't even know the spirit-peering art and can't tell the cultivation realm of that green-robed cultivator? Who in the capital doesn't know that Mr. Mo is perfected Jean Dan? Besides, Nian Chi is Mr. Mo's maidservant. Have you ever seen a maidservant walking side by side with her master, talking and laughing without any regard for seniority? For the past 3 years, Su Zimo and Nian Chi had been together day and night. In the eyes of outsiders, Nian Chi was his maid, but Su Zimo had never seen Nian Chi as a maid. When he was willing to take in Nian Chi, it was only because he was moved by compassion. The two of them strolled along. Not long after, a young foundation establishment cultivator suddenly appeared in front of them. He flipped his hair and smiled at Nian Chi, saying gently, "Miss Nian Chi, you must not be deceived by this person's flowery words. He definitely has other motives for approaching you." The young cultivator pointed at Su Zimo and said with an unfriendly expression. Su Zimo suspected that if they weren't in the capital, this cultivator might have charged up to fight him to the death. "None of your business, go away." Nian Chi hollered and pulled Su Zimo around that person, continuing forward. "Is there anything interesting in the capital today? Let's go take a look." Su Zimo glanced sideways and asked. "Something interesting." Pondering for a moment, Nian Chi said, "There's an elixir battle at Yongqing City today. It's said that 2 cultivators from True Fire Elixir Workshop and Azure Frost Elixir Workshop got into a conflict for some reason. Both parties agreed to decide the victor through elixir refinement today to see who can refine the higher grade elixir. The capital was on high alert as the sect competition approached. The 3 great protectors had changed from a single rotation to a 2x2 rotation. In other words, there were 2 guards guarding Monarch City every day. If there was even the slightest sign of trouble, they would rush over immediately. Under such circumstances, no cultivator or faction would dare to make a move in the capital. If they wanted to resolve their grudges, a competition of elixir and weapon refinement was a good way. Furthermore, this was a grudge between the cultivators of the 2 major elixir workshops in Yongqing City to begin with. It was even more reasonable for them to decide the victor through elixir refinement. True Fire Elixir Workshop, Azure Frost Elixir Workshop, Su Zimo murmured softly and smiled. "Let's go and take a look." True Fire Elixir Workshop was backed by True Fire Sect while Azure Frost Elixir Workshop was backed by Azure Frost Sect. Both of those sects were part of the 5 major sects and Su Zimo had some dealings with them. There was no need to talk about True Fire Sect, they had suffered a huge setback in his hands for the past 3 years. As for Azure Frost Sect, Ji Yaoxue was in Azure Frost Sect and even invited him to join back then. However, Su Zimo rejected her. As for Su Xiaoning, she was cultivating in Azure Frost Sect. Before long, the 2 of them arrived at Yongqing City. "Hurry, let's go take a look. It has already begun. I heard that the person from True Fire Elixir Workshop is a genius of True Fire Sect in recent years. His name is He Xing and he will definitely have a place in the elixir ranking of the sect competition. I heard that the elixir refinement master of Azure Frost sect is a young woman who is unknown. I wonder how she has the courage to compete with He Xing. Following the crowd, Su Zimo and Nian Qi arrived at their destination before long. In a corner of Yongqing City, there was an empty space in the middle of the crowd. At that moment, a man and woman were holding an elixir furnace and tossing ingredients into it continuously. The man had a dignified appearance, but his lips were extremely thin, as though he was a heartless person. While the man was smelting the herbs, his gaze landed on the woman beside him. He had a relaxed expression and sneered with a hint of mockery in his eyes. When Su Zimo looked at the woman, he could not help but shudder and almost exclaim. Even though it was only her side profile, Su Zimo recognized the woman. Su Xiaoning. The young woman who was competing with He Xing of True Fire sect in elixir refinement was Su Zimo's younger sister, Su Xiaoning, whom he had not seen for many years. Initially, Su Zimo thought that he would have to wait until the sect competition officially began before he could meet his younger sister again. To think that he would bump into her here today. What's wrong, young master? Nian Qi was the closest to Su Zimo. Sensing that there was something wrong with Su Zimo's expression, he asked hurriedly. Nothing. With a smile, Su Zimo's gaze was gentle and warm as it landed on Su Xiaoning the entire time. After not seeing her for a few years, Su Xiaoning had grown up a lot. She had a slim figure and her long hair was draped over her singlet with a blue ribbon. Dressed in white robes that were spotless, she truly had the demeanor of an immortal cultivator. Actually, Su Zimo had been thinking about Xiaoning all these years. Xiaoning's spirit root was terrible. Even with Ji Yaoshue's help, she would have been bullied and looked down upon in the sect. Back then, if not for the fact that Su Zimo's future was uncertain, he would have definitely brought Xiaoning along with him. Su Zimo observed carefully. Xiaoning's cultivation had just entered the foundation establishment realm. It was already rather difficult for her to reach that realm within a few years because she had a pseudo-spirit root. It was not hard to imagine that Xiaoning must have suffered greatly in the process. Song Qi had a pseudo-spirit root and could not enter foundation establishment realm even after cultivating for most of his life. What shocked Su Zimo the most was that Xiaoning had actually become an elixir refinement master. Su Zimo had some knowledge of elixir refinement and could naturally tell that Xiaoning was rather familiar with it. Furthermore, she was extremely focused throughout the entire process and was not affected by the outside world. She had the mental fortitude of a top elixir refinement master. Chapter 275. On the surface, there was only a single word difference between elixir refinement and weapon refinement. However, in reality, there was a huge difference. Weapon refinement had an extremely high requirement for the level of the spirit fire. The higher the level of the spirit fire, the higher the efficiency and the better the effects of refining the impurities in the spirit materials. However, elixir refinement was different. Elixir refinement placed more emphasis on the control of the spirit fire. That was because spirit herbs were different from spirit materials like iron ores and had extremely low ignition points. Even a level 1 spirit fire could refine most of the spirit herbs. In elixir refinement, there were two refinements that required an extremely precise control of the temperature of the spirit fire. If the temperature was too high, it would be easy to burn the spirit herbs to ashes. If the temperature was too low, the essence of the spirit herbs could not be extracted. Even though elixir refinement did not require spirit gathering, it required an extremely deep understanding of thousands of spirit herbs. The higher the level of the elixir, the more complicated the recipe and the more things one would have to remember. True top elixir refinement grandmasters would even have to memorize billions of spirit herbs. On the empty ground, the elixir refinement master from True Fire Elixir Workshop, He Xing, had already cultivated a level 2 spirit fire and was rather proficient in controlling flames. Although Su Xiaoning had only cultivated a level 1 spirit fire, she was not weaker than her opponent in terms of temperature control. Both of them were refining the most common spirit recovery elixir. Spirit recovery elixirs were used to recover spirit energy. There were 3 types of spirit recovery elixirs: level 1, level 2, and level 3. Naturally, there was a huge difference in their effects. Both of them were refining grade 2 spirit recovery elixirs, and there were as many as 28 types of spirit herbs in the recipe. There could not be any mistakes in the refinement of any of those 28 herbs, or the elixir formation would definitely fail in the end. He Xing's elixir refinement technique was clearly better. However, that person's gaze was extremely evil and would drift towards Su Xiaoning from time to time, scanning her from head to toe with a bold gaze. Su Zimo narrowed his eyes and a killing intent flashed through them. Sensing it, Nianqi looked at Su Zimo in surprise before looking at Su Xiaoning on the empty ground with a thoughtful expression. This He Xing's elixir refinement technique is decent, but his methods are somewhat despicable. A cultivator in the crowd muttered. Another person covered the former's mouth hurriedly. Shoo, softer. You might get into trouble. Onlookers see things more clearly. Most cultivators could tell that He Xing's intention of giving Su Xiaoning such a look during the elixir refinement process was obvious. He was trying to disrupt Su Xiaoning's mind. During the process of refining pills, the greatest taboo was to be distracted. Regardless of whether it was refining or condensing the pill, the slightest fluctuation in his mind would result in failure. On the other hand, Su Xiaoning ignored He Xing's provocation. She concentrated on refining the herbs in her hands. She was serious, cautious, and careful. The concentration in her eyes was moving. To everyone, Su Xiaoning's alchemy skills were clearly not as brilliant as He Xing's. However, this level of focus was countless times stronger than He Xing's. Su Zimo nodded inwardly, feeling rather gratified. What grudges do these two have? Why are they fighting here? Su Zimo looked at a cultivator beside him and asked in a low voice. That person said, actually, it's not a big deal. I heard that it's because of an alchemy furnace. This female cultivator from Azure Frost sect took a liking to it first and had already paid the spirit stones. However, He Xing caught sight of it and wanted to pay double the spirit stones for the furnace. The female cultivator refused, and that's how a grudge was formed. Later on, He Xing caused trouble for the female cultivator multiple times. The female cultivator couldn't take it anymore and decided to have an alchemy battle with this person. Su Zimo frowned. That woman is an elixir refinement master from Azure Frost Elixir Workshop. Are the other cultivators going to allow their fellow sect members to be bullied by True Fire Elixir Workshop? I don't know about that. That person shook his head. However, this He Xing has a strong background. He's the elixir refinement master with the most potential among the younger generation of True Fire sect. His brother, He Jiang, is extremely strong and is said to be the #1 foundation establishment cultivator in True Fire sect. He's definitely going to enter the top 10 of the spirit ranking in this sect competition. One of the He brothers is skilled in elixir refinement while the other has terrifying combat strength. They're existences that are revered by many in True Fire sect. I reckon that the owner of Azure Frost Elixir Workshop is wary of the relationship between the two sects and is unwilling to offend He Xing. Su Zimo nodded expressionlessly, and no one could tell if he was happy or angry. In that short period of time, He Xing and Su Xiaoning had already begun the fourth step of elixir refinement, the second refinement. When He Xing saw that Su Xiaoning was indifferent, his gaze turned even more brazen as he let out a series of strange laughter. As though she did not hear anything, Su Xiaoning glared at the elixir furnace before her. Using the spirit fire to control the temperature of the flames, she refined and purified the impurities in the essence of the herbs bit by bit. He Xing stood on the spot and laughed maniacally without stopping. Su Xiaoning did not say anything and merely focused on her elixir refinement. It was as though she had forgotten about everything and ignored everyone around her, immersing herself in her elixir refinement. It was clear who was superior. In terms of elixir refinement techniques, He Xing was slightly stronger than Su Xiaoning. However, at that moment, in the eyes of everyone, He Xing was like a clown. The warm sunlight shone on the woman's body and there seemed to be a rainbow of colors behind her. A thin layer of sweat appeared on the tip of the woman's nose and forehead, shining brightly and flawlessly. At that moment, a thought flashed through everyone's minds. This was elixir refinement. This was how elixir refinement masters should be. In the hands of this woman, elixir refinement seemed to have a soul and life. She was not refining elixirs, but nurturing a new life. Looking at the woman's elixir refinement, everyone felt inexplicably touched. They could not help but immerse themselves in the world of elixir refinement masters and witness the birth of a new life. At that moment, Su Zimo smiled. He was smiling happily. Xiaoning had finally found her own path. Su Zimo had dabbled in elixir refinement as well and had even obtained the #1 position of Misty Peak's elixir peak back then. However, at that moment, he could not help but admit that he was far inferior to his sister in terms of elixir refinement. What he knew was merely the surface of elixir refinement. However, what Xiaoning knew was the true essence of elixir refinement. Gradually, an invisible aura began to form around Su Xiaoning, growing stronger and stronger. This was the aura of a top-tier elixir refinement master. He Xing's expression changed. Under the suppression of Su Xiaoning's aura, his heart was in a mess and the flames flickered, nearly incinerating the essence of the herbs in the elixir furnace. Taking a deep breath of air, He Xing composed himself and focused on elixir refinement. However, it was already too late. Su Xiaoning was the first to complete the second refinement. A rich medicinal fragrance wafted out of the elixir furnace. When everyone sniffed it, they felt invigorated and the spirit energy in their bodies stirred. Su Xiaoning closed her eyes and adjusted her breathing for a moment. When she opened them again, her gaze was resolute as she began elixir refinement. At that moment, He Xing had just completed his second refinement. Although there was a medicinal fragrance wafting out of He Xing's elixir furnace as well, it was faintly discernible and everyone did not feel anything when they sniffed it. If nothing went wrong, the quality of Su Xiaoning's elixir would definitely be better than He Xing's elixir after the refinement. Through the medicinal fragrance, the surrounding elixir refinement masters could vaguely tell that Su Xiaoning's elixir might even be able to refine a perfect elixir with 5 elixir patterns. Chapter 276. Junior Sister Xiaoning is going to win. Yes, Azure Frost Elixir Workshop is going to be famous this time round. Among the crowd, the disciples of Azure Frost Elixir Workshop discussed softly in high spirits. It's just a grade 2 elixir. Even if she can win this round, she won't be famous. Azure Frost Elixir Workshop's reputation is built over thousands of years. What has it got to do with her? The person who spoke was a female cultivator in a yellow dress. She had a voluptuous figure and her chin was raised slightly, revealing her slender and fair neck with a proud expression. It was clear that the yellow-dressed woman had a high status in Azure Frost Elixir Workshop. Upon hearing her words, the cultivators who were discussing just now shut up hurriedly with fear in their eyes. Senior Sister Yang is right. An Azure Frost Elixir Workshop disciple replied with a smile. On the other side, the disciples of True Fire Weapon Workshop were also watching the situation on the empty ground with grim expressions. Things aren't looking good. Senior brother, he is going to lose. Don't worry, that girl from Azure Frost sect won't be able to win today. Let's wait for senior brother he's signal. The person who spoke was dressed in light red robes. His lips were curled and his expression was cold. His name was Pang Ming and he was at Perfected Foundation Establishment. Beside him, there was a ferocious-looking spirit lion. It dug its paws into the ground and opened its mouth slightly, revealing its sharp fangs and claws. On the empty ground, the medicinal fragrance emitted from the elixir furnace in front of Su Xiaoning grew thicker and spread through the crowd. Through the holes of the elixir furnace, white smoke wafted out in spirals. The mist changed and Su Xiaoning's figure was faintly discernible, like a fairy who had descended into the mortal world. A white-haired old man sniffed the medicinal fragrance wafting over. Closing his eyes, he revealed an intoxicated expression and said slowly, "Based on my experience, the spirit regeneration pill of this girl from Azure Frost sect will definitely be perfect." Everyone was shocked when they heard that. This old man was the most famous advanced elixir refinement master in Yongqing City. If he dared to make such a claim, the outcome would not be too different. He Xing could also tell that he would definitely lose if this continued. He Xing's eyes shone brightly as he condensed his elixir and shot a glance at Pang Ming in the crowd. Pang Ming understood and patted the head of the spirit lion beside him. The spirit lion moved and growled deeply. Suddenly, it pounced forward and waved its paw towards the elixir furnace in front of Su Xiaoning. This change was too sudden. Not to mention Su Xiaoning, who was focused on refining pills, even the onlookers did not expect it. After all, this was the capital of the Great Zhou dynasty and fighting was strictly forbidden. Now that the sect competition was approaching, the atmosphere was even more tense. Not far away, one of the three great guards, a scarlet vulture guard, was patrolling in midair with a long spear in hand and a cold expression. Nobody expected that the spirit lion of True Fire Elixir Workshop would jump out at this moment. Paw! The spirit lion easily sent Su Xiaoning's elixir furnace flying with a single slap. With a bang, the pill exploded in the alchemy cauldron, and black smoke surged out. It was obvious that the congealing of the pill had failed. In the process of condensing a pill, the greatest taboo was to be disturbed. Even the slightest fluctuation in one's state of mind could result in failure, not to mention that even the cauldron was sent flying. Ah! Su Xiaoning exclaimed and a flash of blood appeared on her arm. It was the spirit lion that sent the elixir furnace flying. Su Xiaoning's reaction was slightly slower and her arm was scratched by the spirit lion's claws. Although it was not serious, her clothes were stained red. The spirit lion knocked over the elixir furnace and injured someone before running back under Pang Ming's scolding. Coughing gently, Pang Ming said with a fake smile, "Fellow Taoist from Azure Frost Elixir Workshop, I'm truly sorry. I didn't discipline it properly and that beast actually ran out and disturbed you. I'll help you teach it a lesson right now." With that said, Pang Ming knocked the spirit lion's head with a moderate force. The spirit lion shook its head, oblivious to it, and even rubbed itself against Pang Ming's body. Huh! A series of laughter broke out from the crowd of True Fire Elixir Workshop. Anyone with a discerning eye could tell that Pang Ming had intentionally ordered the spirit lion to injure someone and knock over the elixir furnace. Looking at the elixir furnace that had fallen to the ground not far away, Su Xiaoning pursed her lips and forgot about the pain in her arm. Her eyes reddened and gradually moistened. At that moment, the first thing that surged in Su Xiaoning's heart was not anger, but sorrow. Right from the beginning, she was not distracted at all and was fully focused on refining the spirit regeneration elixir. She was not wrong. She was extremely focused. However, at the end, it was ruined by someone and her efforts were for naught. She was so close. Sigh. Everyone shook their heads and sighed in unison at the sight of a perfect spirit regeneration elixir that was about to be born, dying just like that. Su Zimo's gaze turned cold. Because the spirit lion was not targeting him, his spirit perception did not react. Furthermore, he had not expected that the cultivators of True Fire Elixir Workshop would dare to allow the spirit lion to injure someone in front of everyone in the capital. Looking at Xiaoning, who was standing on the spot sobbing, Su Zimo's killing intent surged uncontrollably in his heart. Nian Qi, who was standing beside him, was the first to sense it. From Su Zimo, she felt a sense of trepidation that she had never felt before. Nian Qi glanced sideways and could not help but feel her heart skip a beat when she caught sight of Su Zimo's gaze. Nian Qi had seen that terrifying gaze once before. That was the same gaze that Su Zimo's eyes revealed when he faced the two perfected Jin Dan cultivators on that night half a year ago. It was cold, indifferent and calm like an ocean of nirvana. After pondering for a moment, Nian Qi retreated from the crowd silently. Looking around, she sped off not far away. Faced with this turn of events, Su Zimo was calm and did not appear right away, merely watching coldly from the sidelines. He was waiting. He was waiting for the reactions of the two factions. At that moment, the ones who should have reacted the most were the Scarlet Vulture guards that were patrolling not far away and Azure Frost Elixir Workshop behind Xiaoning. However, Su Zimo was disappointed. He had clearly seen the gazes of the two Scarlet Vulture guards land on this place. However, they paused for a moment before turning their heads away, choosing to ignore it. True Fire Elixir Workshop is really too much. That's right. They're clearly letting the lion cause trouble on purpose, and yet, they're still pretending to be innocent. In the crowd, a cultivator frowned and asked, "The Scarlet Vulture guards are not far away and seem to have already witnessed this. Why aren't they rushing over?" "You don't know about that, right?" An old man said. "It's said that the commander of the Scarlet Vulture guards, Perfected Jean Dan, who is nicknamed Vulture, stayed in True Fire sect for a period of time and can be considered as half a disciple of True Fire sect. These Scarlet Vulture guards are all his subordinates, and generally speaking, they'll have to give True Fire sect some face. Furthermore, this matter can be major or minor. Even if we pursue it, it'll most likely be left unsettled." "Why do you say that?" "The spirit lion came out to cause trouble and knocked over the elixir furnace. He Xing and the others insisted that they did not discipline it properly and caused the spirit lion to come out and hurt others. What can you do to them?" Chapter 277. Just as the crowd had said, the Scarlet Vulture guards were clearly biased and chose to ignore everything that happened. A few cultivators from Azure Frost Elixir Workshop were furious and were about to step forward to argue when they were stopped by the sharp gaze of the yellow-dressed woman and retreated helplessly. Most of the disciples from Azure Frost Elixir Workshop were indignant, but they did not dare to say anything because of the yellow-dressed woman's authority. Instinctively, Su Xiaoning turned back and saw the cold face of the yellow-dressed woman. The two factions that should have stood out chose to remain silent at that moment. In the middle of the crowd, Su Xiaoning looked lonely, helpless, and lost. "Done." Right then, He Xing, who was standing at the side, hollered softly. An elixir with a refreshing medicinal fragrance popped out of the elixir furnace and spun in midair. Everyone focused their gazes. There were 3 elixir patterns. A superior grade spirit recovery elixir. Fu-fu. He Xing waved his hand gently and pinched the spirit recovery elixir between his fingers. Looking at Su Xiaoning, who was not far away, he chuckled and said leisurely, "Junior sister Su, you've lost. Senior brother, he is amazing. I'm guessing that senior brother, he only used 70% of his skills this time round. It's definitely less than 70%, 30% at most." The group of cultivators from True Fire Elixir Workshop boasted shamelessly, but the cheers from the surrounding crowd were sparse and sparse. No one was blind. Even though superior-grade elixirs were already rare, if not for the unforeseen event just now, Su Xiaoning would most likely have condensed a perfect elixir with 5 elixir patterns. In the end, it was clear who had won and who had lost. Now that He Xing had the cheek to say such words, everyone was wary. Even though they would not stand out, they could not help but scold him for being shameless in their hearts. "Junior sister Su, since you've lost, hand over the elixir furnace according to our initial agreement," He Xing said smugly with a smile. "I didn't lose." Su Xiaoning was fearless and did not back down as her voice was firm. The smile on He Xing's face froze for a moment before returning to normal. He continued smiling. "Junior sister Su, don't worry. Even though you've lost, I'll still pay double the price for that elixir furnace. I won't take advantage of you as long as you hand it over." "I didn't lose," Su Xiaoning repeated those 3 words. Instantly, He Xing's expression darkened. "Su Xiaoning, don't refuse a toast only to be forced. Because you went back on your word and went back on your word, affecting Azure Frost Alchemy Pavilion's reputation. Not only that, He Xing's TS words, he even's words." Su Xiaoning raised her head with a stubborn expression. She had no intention of yielding. "Xiaoning." Right then, the yellow-robed woman from Azure Frost Elixir Workshop stood out and said indifferently, "Hand that elixir furnace over to fellow Daoist." Su Xiaoning was stunned, her eyes filled with disbelief. Aza stir to Su Xiaoning's. Su Zimo's gaze was dark as he watched everything quietly. "Su to, Xiaoning to, Xiaoning. Xiaoning?" Vulture Su ask. "To Su to you lose 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 lose, Su disciple to, you. S sect you disciple, but, I didn't lose at all. If not for him, Su Xiaoning was about to defend herself when she was interrupted by the yellow-dressed woman. I don't want you to listen to excuses. I only want the outcome. The outcome is that you've lost. There was a hint of sternness in the yellow-dressed woman's voice and the coldness in her eyes intensified. Su Xiaoning's body swayed and her face turned incomparably pale. Just now, Su Xiaoning did not show any fear despite He Xing's overbearing attitude. But now, when her fellow sect mates chose to stand against her, Su Xiaoning's final pillar of support crumbled. The yellow-dressed woman looked at Su Xiaoning coldly and said in a deep voice, Azure Frost Sect and True Fire Sect have always been on good terms. It's best that we don't affect our relationship because of you. Hand over the elixir furnace and apologize to fellow Daoist He. We'll let this matter rest. Apologize? Su Xiaoning smiled bitterly with mockery in her eyes. May I ask, Senior Sister Yang, what did I do wrong? How dare you disobey my orders? The yellow-dressed woman's expression darkened as she said sternly, Don't think that you can be so brazen just because Yao Xue is backing you. Let me tell you, even if Yao Xue is back, Yang Yu have the final say in Azure Frost Elixir Workshop in the capital of Great Zhou, let alone the fact that Yao Xue isn't back yet. While others did not feel anything when they heard that, Su Zimo vaguely caught a few pieces of information. Firstly, Ji Yao Xue had yet to return to the capital. That was normal. There was still more than a month to the sect competition and most sects had yet to make a move. Secondly, this Yang Yu must have a feud with Ji Yao Xue. Furthermore, Yang Yu did not know of Ji Yao Xue's true identity. If Yang Yu knew of Ji Yao Xue's true identity and still dared to be so arrogant, it could only mean that she was an idiot. Back when the two of them first met, Ji Yao Xue hid her surname and identity. That was indeed her style of doing things. Thirdly, the reason why Yang Yu was against Xiaoning was most likely because of Ji Yao Xue. In Yang Yu's eyes, the fact that Xiaoning was on good terms with Ji Yao Xue meant that Xiaoning was definitely her enemy. That was the reason why she kept making things difficult for Xiaoning. Su Xiaoning pursed her red lips tightly and bean-sized tears welled up in her eyes. However, they refused to fall. Slowly, Su Xiaoning took out an elixir furnace from her storage bag. The furnace was extremely small and looked like it had been around for a long time. It was extremely old and was covered in mottled copper. Based on that alone, the elixir furnace was inconspicuous and there was nothing special about it. However, at that moment, Su Xiaoning's arm was injured and fresh blood dripped onto the bronze elixir furnace. After being stained by Su Xiaoning's blood, the elixir furnace suddenly emitted a divine light that shone brightly, causing everyone to gasp in shock. Immediately after, a faint medicinal fragrance wafted out from the elixir furnace. This time round, even a fool could tell that the elixir furnace was definitely a treasure. He Xing's eyes lit up and a flash of greed flashed through his eyes as he licked his lips. Back then, he could vaguely tell that the elixir furnace was similar to something described in an ancient book in True Fire Sect. That was the reason why he pestered Su Xiaoning multiple times, wanting to buy the elixir furnace back. If they were outside the capital, He Xing would have long killed her and snatched the treasure. Now that he had a look, the elixir furnace was indeed no ordinary item and there was a high chance that it was something described in the ancient book. At the thought of what was recorded in the ancient book, He Xing's heart burned and he was even more determined to get his hands on the elixir furnace at all costs. Yang Yu looked at the elixir furnace in Su Xiaoning's hands and froze for a moment with a look of shock in her eyes. It was clear that she had not expected the elixir furnace to be a treasure. For a moment, a look of regret flashed through Yang Yu's eyes. If she did not get Su Xiaoning to return the elixir furnace, given her authority in Azure Frost Elixir Workshop, she would most likely be able to get her hands on the elixir furnace. Under countless greedy gazes, Su Xiaoning felt as though she could be torn into pieces at any moment. She was terrified and helpless as her limbs turned cold. For some reason, a figure suddenly flashed through Su Xiaoning's mind. That figure wore green robes and was neither tall nor burly. However, he was able to shelter her from the wind and rain. At that moment, a gentle voice seemed to ring in Su Xiaoning's ears. Xiaoning, don't be afraid. Chapter 278. That figure appeared in her mind and that voice reverberated in the depths of her memories, causing Su Xiaoning to feel a sense of warmth. Immediately after, Su Xiaoning caught sight of someone. A man in green robes was walking over slowly. That figure did not look tall or burly. However, it gradually overlapped with the figure in Su Xiaoning's memories and became indistinguishable. When she saw that person, Su Xiaoning's mouth opened slightly and her petite body shuddered, her eyes filled with disbelief. How could that be? How could that be? This must be a hallucination. Su Xiaoning could not believe it. She pulled up her sleeves and wiped away the tears in her eyes. Widening her eyes, she looked at the person who had arrived. Even though they had not met for a few years, the green-robed man's gaze was still as warm as before. Su Xiaoning covered her cherry lips with her petite hands and her body shuddered slightly as her eyes were covered with a layer of mist once more. The green-robed man arrived before Su Xiaoning and smiled. Reaching out with his slender fingers, he wiped away the tears on Su Xiaoning's face gently and said gently, "Don't be afraid, I'm here." It was only at this moment that Su Xiaoning was truly certain that everything before her was not an illusion. Su Zimo had truly appeared. He did not descend from the skies, nor were there rainbow clouds, nor was there a massive commotion. There was only a single person and yet, Su Xiaoning felt a long-awaited warmth. Su Xiaoning could no longer control herself and was speechless as tears gushed out. At that moment, all the grievances in her heart seemed to have found a place to vent and she could vent them to her heart's content. "Who are you? This has nothing to do with you. Don't look for trouble." He Xing frowned and hollered at Su Zimo with a cold gaze. Su Zimo glanced sideways and glanced at He Xing indifferently. Su Zimo's gaze was calm as water without any ripples. However, for some reason, He Xing's heart skipped a beat. Su Zimo pointed to the elixir furnace in Xiaoning's hands and smiled. "Keep it. You didn't lose. Why should you give it to someone else?" "Yes." Su Xiaoning nodded her head solemnly. With a flip of her palm, she kept the elixir furnace back into her storage bag. She was unwilling to give in the end. But from the beginning to the end, no one helped her, not even a word. Even her fellow disciples from Azure Frost Elixir Workshop were forcing her to hand over her elixir furnace. At that moment, Su Xiaoning felt cold all over. She was lonely and helpless. Darkness filled her eyes and she could only bow her head and submit. But now, with Su Zimo standing beside her, she was filled with courage. She was not in the wrong in the first place, so why should she compromise? He Xing's face darkened as he said coldly, "Su Xiaoning, what do you mean by this? You want to go back on your word after losing?" Su Xiaoning said, "He Xing, let me repeat myself. I did not lose. Just now, everyone here clearly saw what happened. You know it yourself. I have a clear conscience." Su Xiaoning's words were resolute and decisive. Su Zimo nodded secretly as a look of appreciation flashed across his eyes. Over the past few years of cultivation in Azure Frost Sect, Xiaoning's temperament had become much stronger. "Does that mean that you're being shameless?" He Xing clenched his fists tightly with a ferocious glint in his eyes. Su Zimo turned around and strode before He Xing, asking expressionlessly, "This is the great Zhou dynasty, right under the emperor's feet. What are you trying to do?" "Ha ha ha." He Xing burst into laughter with a mocking look in his eyes. Pointing at Su Zimo, he said, "You're still way too naive." "Oh?" Su Zimo raised his brow slightly. He Xing laughed sinisterly. "Indeed, I don't dare to kill anyone here. However, do you believe that the Scarlet Vulture guards won't care if I slap you a few times right now and embarrass you?" When they heard that, everyone shook their heads and sighed internally. This was completely taking advantage of their power to bully others. He Xing slapped Su Zimo a few times. After all, no one died and the Scarlet Vulture guards would turn a blind eye. However, if Su Zimo dared to resist, the Scarlet Vulture guards would definitely step in. At that time, the one who would suffer would definitely be Su Zimo. When he heard He Xing's words, Su Zimo's expression was calm as he replied calmly, "You don't dare to kill, but I do. Do you believe that I'll kill you if you dare to lay a finger on me?" The moment he said that, the crowd was in an uproar. Tit for tat. What did the green-robed man mean by that? How dare he threaten to kill someone in the great Zhou dynasty right under the emperor's feet? This person was either a lunatic or he was spouting nonsense. "Fufu, are you trying to scare me?" After a brief silence, He Xing suddenly laughed. He Xing could tell that Su Zimo was only at late-stage foundation establishment, the same as him. Notwithstanding the fact that Su Zimo did not dare to attack, even if this person did not care about his life and attacked him, He Xing would be able to retreat immediately. At that time, the Scarlet Vulture guards would step in and suppress this person. At that thought, He Xing reached out and sneered, slapping Su Zimo viciously on the face. At the same time, Su Zimo attacked as well. It was the exact same action and posture. However, Su Zimo's speed was much faster than He Xing's. He Xing merely used his palm, whereas Su Zimo's arm seemed to be spinning a gigantic millstone, arriving instantly with a chilling killing intent. An evil gust of wind blew. He Xing could not dodge at all. The aura of death engulfed him, almost suffocating him. He Xing had miscalculated something. At this distance, there was no way he could escape once Su Zimo attacked. Bang! Su Zimo's palm slapped He Xing's face heavily, letting out a dull thud. Poof! Right in front of countless gazes, He Xing's massive head was smashed apart by Su Zimo's palm. Brains splattered and blood flowed. He Xing's headless body was still standing on the spot, convulsing intentionally or unintentionally. Instantly, the crowd went silent. Everyone's eyes widened as they looked at this scene in disbelief. Even though Su Zimo had already made his threat just now, no one expected him to really attack. Furthermore, he was so decisive in killing without leaving any room for negotiation. It felt as though the green-robed cultivator had found a random reason to kill He Xing. As the elixir refinement master with the most potential among the younger generation of True Fire sect, just now, he was still in high spirits and looked down on everyone. But in the blink of an eye, he was killed by a green-robed cultivator of unknown origins and turned into a headless corpse. Everything had happened too quickly. Everyone looked at Su Zimo as though they were looking at a dead man. Chapter 279. When he heard Su Zimo's words, Pang Ming's heart skipped a beat. What did he mean by that? Did this green-robed cultivator dare to? Before Pang Ming could finish his thought, Su Zimo flashed and executed Divine Steed Fleeting. In the blink of an eye, he appeared before Pang Ming and said coldly, "Since you can't teach this beast a lesson, I'll teach it for you." A malevolent aura surged, suffocating and shuddering one's heart. In his daze, Pang Ming felt that it was not a human that was charging over, but a demon beast that was even more frightening than the spirit lion before him. The spirit lion seemed to have sensed the danger as well, and its fur stood on end. Its initially massive body expanded once more, looking exceptionally ferocious. Roar! The spirit lion roared at Su Zimo, shaking the void as it bared its fangs with a menacing expression. The lion's roar was extremely forceful and powerful, containing a tremendous amount of power. When it suddenly erupted, it was indeed intimidating to ordinary cultivators. However, Su Zimo did not seem to have heard it. It was no exaggeration to say that Su Zimo, who had cultivated the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness, was much stronger than the spirit lion in every aspect. Even the roar of an ancient remnant beast might not be able to shake Su Zimo's mind, let alone an ordinary spirit demon. At the same time, the spirit lion leaped up with all its might and waved its claws. Opening its mouth, it bit down viciously towards Su Zimo's neck. "You must have a death wish." Su Zimo sneered and reached out. With a flip of his palm, he pressed down on the spirit lion's head and pushed it down. This was not some intricate move, it was a contest of strength. The spirit lion made use of the strength of its limbs to leap up. Coupled with the strong physique of demons, it should have had the advantage. Unexpectedly, right in front of everyone, the spirit lion had just leaped up when it was pushed back down by Su Zimo in an even more ferocious and savage manner. Bang! Pressing down on the spirit lion's head, Su Zimo slammed it into the ground savagely, causing the limestone to shatter and blood to splatter everywhere. There was a huge pit in the ground and the spirit lion's skull was shattered. It was already dead. Hiss! The cultivators who saw this were shocked and gasped in shock. How strong was this person's physical body? He had actually squashed a spirit demon to death with a single palm. This person must have cultivated some kind of powerful body-refining secret technique. Although he looks weak, the explosive power of his body is too fierce. Could he be from the Southern Mountains sect? It's said that the Southern Mountains sect's body tempering technique is the strongest among the 5 great sections. He doesn't seem to be from our Southern Mountains sect. I've never seen him before. Among the crowd, a Southern Mountains sect cultivator was confused. Pang Ming had just taken out a middle-grade flying sword when the spirit lion in front of him died. It was too fast. Ah! Seeing Su Zimo's eyes, Pang Ming was so scared that his whole body trembled. He felt his scalp go numb and his legs go soft. At this moment, he finally realized that the green-clothed man had no intention of letting him go at all. Stop! Not far away, 2 scarlet vulture guards shouted loudly as they dashed over. The spirit vultures beneath them emitted high-pitched and sharp cries as they stared fixedly at Su Zimo on the ground with ferocious gazes. Whoosh! Whoosh! Wielding a dagger axe in one hand, the 2 scarlet vulture guards slapped their storage bags with the other and summoned a flying sword. Pointing it forward, they stabbed it towards Su Zimo. Go! At the same time, Pang Ming composed himself and injected spirit energy furiously. The flying sword in his palm shone brightly and pierced forward with a swoosh. 3 flying swords split into 3 different directions and tore through the air at the same time. Su Zimo sneered and lowered his body, almost sticking to the ground as he darted forward. Su Zimo's body was distorted to an unimaginable degree. Like a gigantic anaconda, he shuttled through the 3 flying swords unscathed. The next moment, Su Zimo stood in front of Pang Ming. Reaching out, he gripped Pang Ming's throat and squeezed. Snap! Pang Ming's throat was shattered and his eyes were widened so much that they almost popped out. His head tilted and his tongue lolled out as he fell limply to the ground, dead. In the blink of an eye, Su Zimo had already killed 2 people. The crowd was in chaos. This was the capital of Great Zhou. In broad daylight with the scarlet vulture guards nearby, no one expected that not only would this green-robed cultivator dare to kill, he would even claim 2 lives in a single move. This person is crazy. That thought flashed through most of the cultivators' minds as they hurriedly scattered in all directions, afraid that they would be implicated. Audacious thief! How dare you act so brazenly in the capital? In that short period of time, 2 scarlet vulture guards had already arrived. Far away, there were even scarlet vulture guards speeding over from the skies. There were also some white dots that were rushing over at lightning speed. Today, the Scarlet Vulture and White Hawk Guards were patrolling the capital. The white dots in the skies were the White Hawk Guards. Su Zimo looked at the Scarlet Vulture Guards that were swooping over with a mocking look in his eyes as he sneered, "So, the 2 of you aren't blind. You've arrived just in time." Everyone could hear the mockery in Su Zimo's words and could not help but click their tongues. This person was truly audacious to provoke anyone. The next moment, an even more shocking scene happened as the crowd exploded. Against the incoming Scarlet Vulture Guards, Su Zimo did not dodge or retreat. His eyes lit up as he reached out with both arms and leaped, grabbing the claws of the spirit vultures in midair. Alarmed, the 2 spirit vultures flapped their wings, causing gusts of wind and sand to fill the air as they flew upwards with all their might. However, the Scarlet Vulture Guards on the spirit vultures were expressionless as they wielded their dagger axes. Killing intent surged in their eyes as they stabbed viciously towards Su Zimo in the middle. "Come down!" Su Zimo hollered and exerted strength in his arms. In an unreasonable manner, he yanked the 2 spirit vultures down from midair. The strength of the two spirit vultures could not compare to this seemingly frail scholar. Bang! Bang! Almost at the same time, the two spirit vultures slammed heavily onto the ground, letting out tragic cries as dust flew everywhere. The two scarlet vulture guards lost their balance and their dagger axes lost their aim, nearly stabbing each other. Both of them hurriedly jumped down from the spirit vultures, looking wretched. Poof! Su Zimo took a huge step forward and stomped a spirit vulture to death beneath his feet. In a flash, he sliced into the chest of a scarlet vulture guard and leaned in fiercely. Thud! 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 That person retreated 3 steps before coming to a stop. Immediately after, blood drained from that person's face and his armor was intact. However, his body within exploded into a blood mist with broken limbs flying everywhere. Although it seemed like a simple lean, it contained all of Su Zimo's strength. Although the Scarlet Vulture Guard was at perfected foundation establishment, there was no way his body could withstand such a terrifying burst. The other Scarlet Vulture Guard had just channeled his spirit energy and his dagger axes shone brightly. Just as he was about to step forward, he could not help but shudder and retreat when he saw that. The nearby Scarlet Vulture and White Hawk guards were rushing over. There was no need for him to fight to the death with this lunatic just because of a moment's anger. Once everyone arrived, this person would naturally be killed. Su Zimo's gaze was deep and unfathomable. As though he could see through the person's intentions, he strode forward and said indifferently, "Don't leave either. Hand over your life." Chapter 280. Ah! The remaining Scarlet Vulture Guard hollered and a vicious glint flashed through his eyes. Given how Su Zimo had attacked just now, there was no way he could escape at this distance. His only hope of survival was to exchange a few more rounds with Su Zimo and wait for reinforcements from the other Scarlet Vulture and White Hawk guards. In the blink of an eye, Su Zimo had already closed in. The dagger axe in the Scarlet Vulture Guard's hands shone brightly as he channeled strength with both arms. The dagger axe trembled and drew a semicircle in midair, piercing toward Su Zimo with a chilling intent. Spirit energy surged and a spirit energy storm seemed to have formed around the dagger axe with a terrifying might. Su Zimo's expression was unchanged as he reached out with his palm and grabbed the incoming dagger axe in a seemingly effortless manner. Curl and tremble. The spirit energy storm around the dagger axe dissipated instantly. Buzz! The dagger axe trembled violently and the Scarlet Vulture Guard could not hold on to it any longer. His palm split open and he cried out in pain as his palm was already drenched in blood. Right in front of countless gazes, the moment the two sides made contact, the Scarlet Vulture Guard's weapon was already snatched away by this unknown green-robed cultivator. Everyone's eyeballs nearly popped out. He was only at late-stage foundation establishment, but he was able to withstand a spirit weapon with his body and not lose. Just how strong was this person's physique? Su Zimo's gaze was cold as he gripped the dagger axe that he had snatched and stabbed in reverse, flicking it upwards. Poof! Blood flashed. The throat of the Scarlet Vulture Guard was pierced instantly and his eyes dimmed as he fell to the ground with a thud. When everyone saw that, they were shocked and their mouths were agape, their eyes filled with disbelief. The situation had changed too quickly and even now, many people could not react in time. It had only been more than 10 breaths since Su Zimo attacked, but 4 people were already dead on the spot. If it was said that Su Zimo killing 2 cultivators from True Fire Elixir Workshop was already shocking enough. Later on, he'd made a decisive move and domineeringly suppressed 2 Crimson Vulture Guards, and it had already caused everyone to be astounded. Decisive in killing. It's been a long time since I've seen such a ruthless cultivator. In the crowd, an old man secretly clicked his tongue and sighed with emotion. So what if you're decisive in killing? In the end, you're still a dead man. That's right. If this person had only killed the disciples of True Fire Elixir Workshop, he might still have a chance to live. However, just now, he even killed the Scarlet Vulture Guards. This is equivalent to openly challenging the royal family's authority. While the crowd was discussing, their gazes were always on Su Zimo. Their minds were tense, afraid that he would rush into the crowd and kill wantonly. After all, in everyone's eyes, Su Zimo was already a dead man. Since he knew that he was going to die, it was normal for him to kill a few more of them. Unexpectedly, after Su Zimo killed 4 people in a row, he stood with his hands clasped behind his back. His expression was indifferent, and he did not take any other drastic actions. When he saw that the Scarlet Vulture and White Hawk guards had already arrived and were gradually surrounding him, Su Zimo did not escape either, as though he had given up. However, what puzzled everyone was that they could not see any hint of panic or fear in Su Zimo's eyes. They were like an ancient well, deep and dark without any ripples. At that moment, the green-robed cultivator standing beside the 4 corpses seemed to have turned into a mystery. Nobody could see through him. Initially, everyone was caught off guard when he attacked. Eventually, everyone was puzzled by his calmness. Suddenly, an old man said in a deep voice, "Actually, that green-robed cultivator does have a chance of survival." "What do you mean?" someone asked. The old man said, "Did you guys notice? Strictly speaking, it's not that person's fault. He Xing was the one who attacked first. From that perspective, although that person's actions were extreme, there's a reasonable explanation. Even though killing was not allowed in the capital, if someone attacked another person, the latter could not possibly stay on the spot and allow the other party to slaughter them. They could definitely retaliate." The old man's meaning was simple. If everything was based on the premise that He Xing attacked Su Zimo first, then Su Zimo's actions later on could be considered as legitimate retaliation. That's useless. That person is bound to die. That's right. Even if he's in the right, he's facing 2 major factions, True Fire Sect and the Scarlet Vulture Guards. What kind of status does he have to go against those 2 factions? Unless that person's status is so high that even the Emperor of Great Zhou has to give him face, he's definitely going to die. Not far away, Su Xiaoning had just snapped out of her shock and was about to run towards Su Zimo when she paused. Su Zimo narrowed his eyes with a sharp gaze and shook his head without a trace. The current situation was complicated and unclear. He was not sure what the outcome would be either. Given the circumstances, Su Zimo did not want Xiaoning to be embroiled in it. The siblings had a telepathic connection and Xiaoning understood. Although she did not head forward, her eyes were filled with worry. Swoosh! 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 Before long, the Scarlet Vulture and White Hawk guards closest to the place had arrived. Looking at the few corpses on the ground, many of them had cold expressions and looked at Su Zimo with endless killing intent. What's going on? Right at this moment, a cold and gloomy voice slowly sounded. Under everyone's gazes, a figure flew over with lightning speed without anything beneath his feet. In the blink of an eye, he was already in midair and hovered in midair. Perfected Jin Dan. The person wore scarlet robes and was bald without eyebrows. His aura was cold and his gaze was as sharp as an eagle's. "Greetings, Commander." In midair, many Scarlet Vulture guards shouted in unison. The person who had arrived was the commander of the Scarlet Vulture guards, known as Vulture. He was ruthless and had a violent temperament. Vulture had a unique set of tortures and any cultivator who fell into his hands would suffer a fate worse than death. It was said that there was a cultivator who offended Vulture previously and was tortured for an entire month. He had a mental breakdown and went completely insane before finally dying of 1,000 cuts in a tragic manner. There was a saying in the Great Zhou dynasty, one would rather commit suicide than fall into the hands of Vulture. Right after Vulture arrived, another figure descended as well. She wore white robes that were spotless and had extraordinary looks. With a long sword by her waist, she was graceful. "Greetings, Commander." When they saw that person, the White Hawk guards in midair cupped their fists and nodded. The White Hawk guards were all female cultivators and their voices were crisp, attracting everyone's attention. The person who had arrived was the commander of the White Hawk guards, Bai Yuhan. As the sect competition approached, there were 2 guards patrolling the capital daily while the other guard rested. It was a rotation. Today, The guards patrolling the capital were the Scarlet Vulture and White Hawk guards. Right now, the commanders of both guards had arrived. Looking at the 4 corpses on the ground, Bai Yuhan frowned slightly and scanned Su Zimo before shaking her head. In Bai Yuhan's opinion, this green-robed cultivator was unfamiliar and did not have a sect badge on his waist. He was most likely an itinerant cultivator. From the looks of it, this person's fate was already set. Chapter 281. What's going on? The commander of the Scarlet Vulture Guards, Bald Vulture, surveyed his surroundings expressionlessly and asked in a deep voice. Some cultivators from True Fire Elixir Workshop hurried forward and described everything that happened just now with exaggerated details. Fufufu, Bald Vulture looked at Su Zimo playfully with a cruel gaze and laughed maniacally. It's over. That green-robed cultivator is definitely going to be tortured to death in Bald Vulture's hands. If I were that person, I would kill myself here right now and have a quick death. Many cultivators discussed in hushed tones. The commander of the White Hawk Guards, Bai Yuhan, could not help but frown when she heard the description. There was something strange about the entire situation. Initially, it was a feud between True Fire Elixir Workshop and Azure Frost Elixir Workshop. Or rather, it was a personal feud between He Xing and Su Xiaoning. Even though Pang Ming used his lion to injure and knock over the elixir cauldron and He Xing bullied others later on, the situation was still under control. It was only when the green-robed cultivator appeared that the situation went completely out of control. It was true that He Xing attacked first. However, the green-robed cultivator's reaction was way too intense. He killed 2 people in a row without giving the other party any chance to explain. Furthermore, even if killing He Xing was justified as retaliation, the killing of the Scarlet Vulture Guards after that did not make sense. Instinctively, Bai Yuhan looked at Su Zimo and was slightly stunned. Despite being surrounded by 2 guards of the capital and facing 2 commanders, one of whom was the cruel Bald Vulture, this person did not show any fear at all. In fact, Bai Yuhan could not even see any hint of panic in his eyes. This was someone who dared to kill in the capital, and even though they were guards, he was still so decisive. Now that he was surrounded, what sort of backing did this person have to be so calm? Bald Vulture looked down at Su Zimo with excitement in his eyes as he said sinisterly, very good, very good. I've been bored during this period of time and someone's here to relieve my boredom. Hee hee. You can't touch me. Suddenly, Su Zimo spoke and looked at Bald Vulture calmly. The moment he said that, the crowd was in an uproar. Who was this person to dare to openly challenge the commander of the Scarlet Vulture Guards? He must be tired of living. Vulture's face darkened. Ever since he took the position of Grand Commander of the Scarlet Vulture Guards, no one had dared to speak to him like this in all these years. Brat, let me tell you, even if the Heavenly Emperor comes today, he won't be able to save you. Bald Vulture said coldly, don't worry, I have 100 ways to make you wish you were dead. In the end, you will kneel before me and beg for death. At this moment, another voice came from afar. You really can't touch him. Everyone looked over towards the source of the voice, and they saw a figure rushing over like a bolt of lightning. He soared into the sky with great strides, and his speed was extremely swift. In the blink of an eye, he'd already arrived here. The newcomer was clad in green armor. He was tall and burly, with a black face and curly beard. It was actually the Azure Falcon Guard's Grand Commander, Mu Dongqing. When the curly-bearded man saw Su Zimo, he gave him a look, hinting him not to worry. Su Zimo nodded slightly in greeting. The Azure Falcon Guards should be resting today and the bearded man should not have appeared here. But now that the bearded man was able to arrive in time, someone must have informed him. Su Zimo swept his gaze and realized that Nian Qi was nowhere to be seen. With a quick thought, he vaguely guessed the truth. That lass sure is smart. Su Zimo lamented internally. When they saw the bearded man appear and heard his words, everyone was invigorated. They could vaguely sense that the situation had changed once more. Mu Dongqing, what are you doing here on your day off? Bald Vulture's gaze shifted between the bearded man and Su Zimo as he suddenly asked. The bearded man replied in a seemingly casual manner, "Nothing much. I saw that there was quite a commotion here, so I came over to take a look." "Foo-foo." Bald Vulture chuckled. "There's nothing for you to do here. I'm enough. You can leave." "All right." The bearded man nodded and landed on the ground. Grabbing Su Zimo's arm, he soared into the air and wanted to bring Su Zimo away from this place. Bald Vulture's expression changed. In a flash, he arrived in front of the bearded man and blocked their path. With a dark expression, he asked slowly, "Mu Dongqing, what's the meaning of this?" "Nothing much." The bearded man stood in front of Su Zimo without a change in expression. Bald Vulture pointed to the corpse on the ground and sneered, "This person has no respect for the law and went on a killing spree in the capital. Furthermore, he killed 2 of my Scarlet Vulture guards, and you want to take him away just like that? Mu Dongqing, aren't you way too bold?" The bearded man frowned. Suddenly, Su Zimo whispered something into his ears. The bearded man's eyes lit up as he said in a deep voice, "Vulture, since He Xing was the one who attacked first, he deserved to die as well. As for your Scarlet Vulture guards, it's not honorable either, and you're clearly biased. You're responsible for your negligence. Mu Dongqing, the Azure Falcon guards are resting today. It's not your place to interfere in the matters here." Bald Vulture's eyes flickered and his voice turned colder. The bearded man said in a deep voice, "Today, I'm only Mu Dongqing and not the Azure Falcon guards. No other Azure Falcon guards will interfere in today's matter as well. TSK, TSK, TSK." Suddenly, Bald Vulture reared his head and laughed sinisterly, sending chills down one's spine. A moment later, the laughter came to a stop. Bald Vulture slapped his storage bag and withdrew 2 silver hooks that shone with a cold glint. He said slowly, "If you want to protect him today, you'll be going against me and the entire Scarlet Vulture guards. At that time, don't blame me for being merciless." When they heard that, the Scarlet Vulture guards in midair drew their spirit weapons one after another and glared at the bearded man with ferocious gazes. The bearded man went silent. Bald Vulture was using the strength of the entire guard to pressure him. As long as he dared to object, he would be going against the entire Scarlet Vulture guards. Just when everyone thought that the bearded man was going to compromise, the bearded man did not back down at all. He gently touched his storage bag and a huge iron hammer appeared in his hand, emitting a steady and heavy aura. Tit for tat. I'll say it again. You can't touch him today. The bearded man's gaze was like a torch as the hammer in his hands trembled. Spirit light shone brightly and his aura expanded as 4 spirit patterns shone brightly, causing a series of exclamations. 4 spirit patterns, a supreme-grade spirit weapon. Everyone was in an uproar. On one hand, they were shocked by the supreme-grade spirit weapon in the bearded man's hands. On the other hand, no one expected the bearded man to go against the entire Scarlet Vulture guards for the sake of this green-robed cultivator. The hammer in the bearded man's hands shone with a spirit light. Under the guidance of his aura, the Scarlet Vulture guards in midair circulated their spirit energy one after another, and the dagger axes in their hands shone brightly with flying swords. In the blink of an eye, both sides were ready to fight at any moment. Chapter 282. To everyone, no matter what the cause of this conflict was, it was completely out of control now that it had developed to this point, and a huge battle was inevitable. With 2 Scarlet Vulture guards dead, there was no way Bald Vulture would back down in front of everyone. He had to seek justice. Otherwise, it would not be just him. The reputation of the entire Scarlet Vulture guards in the capital would be tarnished. Right now, the bearded man's attitude was akin to adding fuel to the fire. There was even less reason for Bald Vulture and the Scarlet Vulture guards to back down. In reality, contrary to everyone's expectations, Bald Vulture was caught between a rock and a hard place. Where did Mu Dongqing get his hands on a supreme-grade spirit weapon? Damn it! Bald Vulture cursed internally with an imperceptible hint of jealousy in his eyes. Although he was the commander of the Scarlet Vulture guards, he had not obtained a single supreme-grade spirit weapon after all these years. Under normal circumstances, with him holding back the bearded man in a huge battle, the other Scarlet Vulture guards would be able to suppress the green-robed cultivator with ease. But now, the bearded man had suddenly taken out a supreme-grade spirit weapon. He was weaker than the bearded man to begin with. Coupled with that supreme-grade spirit weapon, Bald Vulture was even less of a match for the bearded man. If they were to fight, the outcome would be unpredictable. Right then, Bai Yuhan spoke, "Commanders, if you guys fight in the capital over a small matter and cause panic, I'm afraid both of you won't be able to escape punishment when the king blames you." The bearded man and Bald Vulture were in a tense standoff. At that moment, Bai Yuhan was the only one qualified to speak. The atmosphere between the two sides eased slightly. Bai Yuhan continued, "I have a suggestion. Both of you, commanders, take a step back and meet the emperor immediately for the king to decide." When they heard that, the bearded man and Bald Vulture heaved a sigh of relief at the same time. "I'm fine with that," the Vulture man sneered and took the initiative to speak. In his opinion, as long as he met the emperor, the bearded man would definitely be punished and the green-robed cultivator would not be able to escape death as well. The bearded man put away his weapon and nodded. "Sure." Bai Yuhan cupped her fists. "That's great. I'll head to the palace first to report this matter." With that said, Bai Yuhan turned and left. She transformed into a stream of light and disappeared before everyone's eyes in the blink of an eye. Sweeping his gaze between the bearded man and Su Zimo, Bald Vulture's eyes flashed with mockery. "Let's go. Let's see what you can say once we're in the grand hall of the palace with the might of the heavens." The bearded man smiled and did not reply. He turned to Su Zimo and asked in a low voice, "Sir, do you have any other instructions?" "Please wait a moment." Su Zimo comes to Ning. "Brother," Su Xiaoning frowned and looked worried. Her slender little hand grabbed Su Zimo's sleeve subconsciously, not daring to let go. She was so anxious that she was about to cry. "Why are you crying?" Su Zimo smiled and reached out his hand to rub Su Xiaoning's head lovingly, messing up the long hair on her forehead. When they were little, Su Zimo liked to mess up Ning's hair. Each time, Ning would fly into a rage and chase after Su Zimo. The two of them chased and fled, running across the lawn and streams. It was only until they were drenched in sweat and exhausted that they fell to the ground without caring about their image. Not only were their hair messy, their bodies were covered in dust and they looked wretched. At that time, the two siblings would look at one another and smile. Even if they were reprimanded by their eldest brother when they returned home, they would still enjoy it. Now that Su Zimo did that, he wanted to divert Ning's attention. Unexpectedly, she cried even more miserably and was sobbing uncontrollably. Su Zimo said gently, "Don't worry, I'm not going to die." Humph. When Yang Yu of Azure Frost Elixir Workshop heard that, she could not help but scoff coldly. Glancing sideways at Su Zimo, she said, "Do you think that you'll be able to come out alive after entering the palace?" Su Zimo's gaze swept across and a torrential malevolent aura burst forth. It was as though there was a thick stench of blood that caused one's heart to shudder. Yang Yu held her breath and swallowed the words that she was about to say. The corpses on the ground had yet to turn cold and the blood was still warm. Who would dare to provoke someone who dared to commit a massacre in the capital? Su Zimo patted Ning on the shoulder and said firmly, "Go back and wait for me. I'll come out to fetch you in a while." As though she could sense the confidence in Su Zimo's tone, Su Xiaoning stopped crying and asked softly, "Really?" "Yes." Su Zimo nodded. On the other side, Bald Vulture came before the cultivators of True Fire Elixir Workshop and said in a deep voice, "Go back now and inform the most prestigious cultivators of True Fire sect in the capital such as Elder Zhang and the others of True Fire Weapon Workshop to pay their respects to the Emperor." Understood. The cultivators of True Fire Elixir Workshop understood and turned to leave. Glancing sideways, Bald Vulture looked at Su Zimo who was not far away and sneered, "Lad, your backing is none other than Mu Dongqing. However, I'm telling you, no one can save you today." Su Zimo's expression was calm and fearless as he replied indifferently, "Don't be too sure of your words. The bearded man, Su Zimo, and Bald Vulture moved and headed towards the capital, disappearing before everyone's eyes before long. If he meets the Emperor, that green-robed cultivator won't be able to escape death. If the commander of the Azure Falcon Guards wants to protect that person, he'll be implicated as well. Yes, although both sides are commanders of the capital's guards, there's still True Fire sect on the other side. If the elders and perfected beings of True Fire sect were to step forward to apply pressure, even the Emperor of Great Zhou would have to give them some face. That's right. There's no way the Emperor of Great Zhou would offend the entire True Fire sect for a Foundation establishment cultivator. Not everyone is Mr. Mo, able to win against the True Fire sect in an arm wrestle. The crowd did not disperse for a long time as they discussed fervently. Mu Dongqing, where did you get that supreme-grade spirit weapon? Along the way, Bald Vulture asked in a seemingly casual manner. The bearded man remained silent. A cold glint flashed through Bald Vulture's eyes as he said coldly, recently, there hasn't been any news of supreme-grade spirit weapons being auctioned in Sky Treasure Auction House. However, your supreme-grade spirit weapon is actually a hammer that matches you perfectly. It's as though someone had it custom-made for you. Pausing for a moment, Bald Vulture asked slowly, that hammer was custom-made for you by Mr. Mo, right? So what if it was? So what if it wasn't? The bearded man turned around and asked with a fake smile. Bald Vulture declared proudly, if you can make a recommendation for me and get Mr. Mo to custom-make a supreme-grade spirit weapon for me as well, I'll let you off for today. Mu Dongqing, you have no chance of winning today. The moment he said that, Bald Vulture sensed something and glanced sideways. Su Zimo was looking at him with a strange expression and a hint of mockery in his eyes. That gaze was disgusting to Bald Vulture. Bald Vulture smiled sinisterly and said coldly, lad, when you land in my hands, I'll dig out your eyeballs first and let you look at them to your heart's content. When Su Zimo heard that, he chuckled gently. Interesting. Chapter 283. Rain Admiration Pavilion. It was an elegant place in the palace where members of the royal family would listen to and observe the rain. There was a pool of clear water in front of the pavilion with lotus flowers and leaves floating on it. Beside the pool, there were plantains and bamboos. Be it the spring rain or autumn rain, they would fall on different plants. Coupled with the different mental states of those listening to the rain, different sounds would ring in their ears and hearts with a unique charm. Not long after Su Zimo and the other two entered the palace, someone came forward and brought them here. There were only two people in the Rain Admiration Pavilion. One of them was Bai Yuhan, who had arrived first. The other person wore golden brocade robes and had shoulder-length hair. Standing in front of the window, he gazed at the skies. Although his back was facing everyone and his appearance could not be seen, there was an indescribable might that made one feel impressed. Greetings, Your Majesty. The bearded man and bald eagle hurriedly knelt on one knee and greeted with cupped fists. Yes, the Emperor's voice was deep and magnetic. Su Zimo's gaze flickered as he looked at the Emperor's back view. Reporting, right then, an Imperial Army soldier sprinted over and said in a deep voice, 10 elders of True Fire Weapon Workshop, True Fire Elixir Workshop request an audience. Granted, the Emperor replied once more as a reply. Bald Eagle glanced sideways at the bearded man provocatively and sneered repeatedly. The bearded man was unmoved and had a calm expression. Before long, 10 perfected Jin Dan streaked through the air and almost all of them were old men with white hair and beards. Although those Jin Dan perfected beings were from True Fire sect, they had stayed in the capital for hundreds of years. For example, Elder Zhang of True Fire Weapon Workshop was considered the youngest among the 10 of them. The Emperor did not turn back or say anything, merely gazing at the skies. Unknowingly, the skies were already filled with dark clouds and a downpour was about to happen. Nobody could figure out the thoughts of the Emperor of Great Zhou. Suddenly, the atmosphere in the Rain Admiration Pavilion turned oppressive and gloomy. Bai Yuhan stepped forward and said, if anyone has anything to say it here. His Majesty will make the final decision. The 10 elders of True Fire sect exchanged glances. One of them stood out and pointed at Su Zimo. This man killed wantonly in the capital with no regard for the law. Not only did he kill 2 disciples of True Fire sect for no reason, he even killed 2 Scarlet Vulture guards. His intentions are punishable. Rumble. At this moment, there was a sudden clap of thunder. Near, heavy rain poured down like torrential rain. In the pouring rain, Vulture said slowly, "Your Majesty, this person ignores the law and is no different from challenging the majesty of the Emperor. If we don't kill him, we won't be able to face the Emperor. If we don't kill him, we won't be able to appease the anger of the people. If we don't kill him, we won't be able to uphold the law of the country. Besides that, this kid has committed a heinous crime." As the Grand Commander of the Azure Falcon Guards, not only did Mu Dongqing not avoid arousing suspicion, he even stood out to protect this person and almost caused a huge battle to break out and cause the guards to kill each other. In my opinion, we should strip Mu Dongqing of his position as Grand Commander and imprison him for all eternity. Following Bald Eagle's words, the rain outside turned heavier. The raindrops fell on the banana leaf, fiercely and rapidly. There was actually a faint murderous intent that pervaded the rain-admiring pavilion. The Emperor stood with his hands behind his back, looking at the rain outside without saying anything. The rain admiration pavilion fell into a momentary silence. The atmosphere turned increasingly oppressive. After a moment, Su Zimo spoke slowly, "Everyone, there's one thing that you've missed out. He Xing was the one who attacked me first." Elder Zhang of True Fire Weapon Workshop sneered, "From what I know, He Xing merely wanted to slap you or humiliate you at most. However, you killed him." Su Zimo replied indifferently, "He didn't die in vain since he humiliated me." Huh. Elder Zhang burst into laughter. "What a joke. What's your status? He Xing has to pay with his life just because he humiliated you. Given my status, He Xing can't touch me. If he touches me, he'll die." Su Zimo said word by word. The expressions of the 10 elders of True Fire sect changed. They could vaguely sense that Su Zimo was not joking. Bald Eagle also realized that something was amiss with the situation. The fact that Su Zimo could remain so calm in front of the Emperor meant that he had something to rely on. Based on what? Elder Zhang grit his teeth and asked. Right then, another voice sounded from the Rain Admiration Pavilion. Based on the fact that he's the #1 weapon refinement master of the Great Zhou dynasty, the owner of Mo's Spirit Weapon Workshop. Mo Ling. Everyone turned towards the voice and saw the Emperor turning around slowly, revealing his true appearance. His forehead was broad and he exuded an imposing aura without anger. His eyes were bright. It was the yellow-robed man who visited Mo's Spirit Weapon Workshop a few months ago. The moment he said that, apart from the bearded man, everyone present was stunned and dumbfounded. That green-robed cultivator was Mo Ling? Shouldn't Mo Ling be perfected Jean Dan? That person was only at late-stage foundation establishment, how could he refine supreme-grade spirit weapons? Elder Zhang's mind was in a mess. As a late-stage foundation establishment, how could Mo Ling have survived the assassination attempt a few months ago? If those words did not come from the Emperor's mouth, no one would believe it. Even now, everyone present was still doubtful and full of doubts. The bearded man was rather calm after knowing about Su Zimo's identity. However, a look of realization flashed through Bai Yuhan's eyes as she lamented internally, "So, that's your trump card. No wonder you're so calm." No matter what excuses True Fire sect and Bald Eagle had, as long as Su Zimo revealed his identity, the situation would be reversed. Among them, the most confused person was the commander of the Scarlet Vulture Guards, Bald Eagle. How was that possible? Why did he suddenly? Bald Eagle thought of countless possibilities, but the only thing he did not expect was for the person before him to be Mo Ling. If that was the case, He Xing's attempt to humiliate the #1 weapon refinement master of the capital of Great Zhou could only be considered as asking for it and deserved to die. Unknowingly, the rain outside had stopped. The downpour came suddenly and stopped just as quickly. The emperor looked at Su Zimo with a bright gaze and smiled. "Mr. Imo, long time no see. How have you been?" Initially, the emperor thought that his sudden appearance would definitely shock Su Zimo. However, on the contrary, Su Zimo's expression was calm and he looked extremely calm. Su Zimo merely bowed slightly and cupped his fists. "You flatter me." The reason why he was so calm was because Su Zimo had already vaguely guessed the identity of the yellow-robed man a few months ago. Bald Eagle knew that his previous actions had already incurred the wrath of Su Zimo. At that moment, he made up his mind and said in a deep voice, "Even if you're Mo Ling and it's perfectly justifiable for you to kill He Xing, why did you kill my Scarlet Vulture guards?" Su Zimo said, "Previously, the Scarlet Vulture guards chose to turn a blind eye to He Xing and Pang Ming's lion attacks. Why is it that when it comes to me, the Scarlet Vulture guards want to kill me without a second word? Lord Commander, I even suspect that you and True Fire Sect have ulterior motives and work together to set up this trap in Yongqing City to kill me." The moment he said that, the expressions of the 10 elders of True Fire Sect and Bald Eagle changed. Su Zimo's words were akin to a battle of words and were enough to strike at their hearts. Prior to this, the Emperor of Great Zhou had clearly announced that no one was to find trouble with Mo Ling in the future. But now, they had coincidentally gotten into a conflict with Mo Ling. If they could not explain it clearly, it would be easy for the Emperor of Great Zhou to misunderstand. At that time, they would be the ones to bear the wrath of the Emperor. In just a few words, he had turned the situation around. Outside the Rain Admiration Pavilion, a ray of sunlight broke through the dark clouds and shone on the pond, reflecting a gorgeous glow. Chapter 284. Bald Vulture broke out in cold sweat and knelt on the ground hurriedly, saying in a deep voice, "Before this, I didn't know Mr. Mo at all, let alone set up a trap with True Fire Sect. Please investigate, Your Majesty." Elder Zhang of True Fire Weapon Workshop widened his eyes like a dead fish, as though he wanted to bite off a piece of flesh from Su Zimo. The person before him was Mo Ling, the #1 weapon refinement master of Great Zhou who could customize supreme-grade spirit weapons. How old was that person? He was only in his 20s and True Fire Weapon Workshop had been established in the capital for thousands of years with a deep foundation. Yet, they were defeated by this young man before him. The other elders of True Fire Sect were also flustered by the news with terrified expressions. When she saw that, Bai Yuhan, the commander of the White Hawk Guards, shook her head gently and sighed internally. In reality, if the green-robed cultivator before her was an ordinary person, even if He Xing was the one who provoked him first, the Emperor would definitely side with True Fire Sect and the Scarlet Vulture Guards. That person would not be able to escape death. But now, the green-robed cultivator had an additional identity. At the very least, Mo Ling's identity was enough to go against True Fire Sect in the capital of Great Zhou. In fact, his influence for the past 2 years had even surpassed them. True Fire Sect and the Scarlet Vulture Guards had bumped into an iron plate and could only admit that they were unlucky. The Emperor pondered for a moment before declaring, True Fire Sect was the one who bullied others and used the lion to injure others first. He Xing provoked Mr. Mo and he deserved to die on the spot. Bald Vulture, you're from True Fire Sect and can be considered half a disciple. It's clear that you're biased in this matter. Furthermore, you failed to manage your subordinates well and failed to contain the matter within a controllable range immediately. That's your fault. If the Scarlet Vulture Guards could stand out to uphold justice after Pang Ming used the lion to injure others, Su Zimo would not have killed on the streets. It was because of the Scarlet Vulture Guards' inaction that Su Zimo was filled with killing intent when he saw Xiaoning being bullied and isolated by True Fire Elixir Workshop and Azure Frost Elixir Workshop. The Emperor continued, Bald Vulture, you'll be punished with a year's salary and no rest. If something similar happens in the capital again, you'll be punished severely. Thank you, Your Majesty. The Emperor waved his hand. All right, all of you may leave. Mr. Mo, stay behind. The matter was settled and the 10 elders of True Fire Sect, Bald Vulture, the Bearded Man and Bai Yuhan left the Rain Admiration Pavilion. The 10 elders of the True Fire sect had suffered quite a blow. Before this, True Fire Weapon Workshop had already lost a round against Mo Ling and their reputation in the capital plummeted. But now, True Fire Elixir Workshop had coincidentally bumped into Mo Ling. The death of the Elixir Refinement Master with the greatest potential of the younger generation could be said to be a heavy loss. Mo Ling, Elder Zhang gnashed his teeth in hatred. His face was gloomy, and his eyes were filled with endless resentment. In the Rain Pavilion. Mr. Mo, what a good plan. After everyone dispersed, the Emperor looked at Su Zimo with a fake smile and said something baffling. Su Zimo's expression didn't change, and he didn't answer. The Emperor smiled and changed the topic. Mr. Mo, there's still more than a month until the sect competition. After it's over, the ancient battlefield's passageway will be opened. What are your plans? There are great opportunities in the ancient battlefield and I naturally want to explore it. At that time, I'll take part in the sect competition, Su Zimo replied. The Emperor smiled. Given your capabilities, there's no need for you to take part in the sect competition. There's definitely a spot for you on the weapon ranking. How about this? During the sect competition, I'll invite you to be one of the judges. At that time, you can give pointers to the talents of the various sections. I'll leave the number 1 spot on the weapon ranking for you. After the competition, you can enter the ancient battlefield with the others. How about that? Thank you, Your Majesty. Su Zimo cupped his fists in thanks and paused for a moment before continuing. The supreme-grade spirit weapon that Your Majesty requested previously has already been refined. I'll leave it with you first. When the time comes, I'll get someone to retrieve it, the Emperor said casually. Su Zimo was slightly stunned. Although he was puzzled, he did not ask. Worried about Xiaoning, Su Zimo bowed and took his leave, leaving the Rain Admiration Pavilion under the lead of the guards. Just as Su Zimo left the Rain Admiration Pavilion, a group of Imperial guards patrolled the area. The leader was clad in golden armor and had a cold expression as he surveyed the surroundings with a sharp gaze. The Golden Imperial Guard happened to catch sight of Su Zimo leaving the Rain Admiration Pavilion. Just as he was about to look away, he suddenly thought of something and his expression changed. The Golden Imperial Guard narrowed his eyes and looked in the direction of Su Zimo. Su Zimo's footsteps were extremely fast and in the blink of an eye, the Golden Imperial Guard could only see his back view. It's him. How is that possible? The Golden Imperial Guard muttered and his eyes flickered in deep thought. A few years had passed and that person had changed way too much. Logically speaking, that person did not have a spirit root and could not cultivate. If not for the familiar green robes and delicate side profile, the Golden Imperial Guard would not have connected the two of them together. The Golden Imperial Guard hesitated for a moment and a killing intent flashed through his eyes. He turned to an Imperial Guard behind him and said, "Continue patrolling. I'll head out for a while." Understood. The Imperial Guard behind him bowed and replied. The Golden Imperial Guard followed in the direction that Su Zimo left in secretly. Rain Admiration Pavilion. Not long after Su Zimo left, a refined man arrived. It was Jining Jinjuan, Ming Zhe. Perfected Lord Ming Zhe laughed bitterly. Seems like Mo Ling has truly guessed your identity previously. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been so calm today. Interesting. To think that he would want to make use of my influence to break the situation. The Emperor smiled as well and asked, "What's the name of the woman from Azure Frost sect who was injured by the Spirit Lion?" Perfected Lord Ming Zhe replied, "I heard that her name is Su Xiaoning and she refers to Mo Ling as his sister. Her background is unknown and no one has heard her mention it before. However, according to the other disciples, this woman is rather close to the third princess in Azure Frost sect." The Emperor frowned. Perfected Lord Ming Zhe analyzed, there are two possibilities for their surnames being different. Firstly, Mo Ling's surname is Su. Secondly, Su Xiaoning is his sister. However, no matter which possibility it is, it proves that Su Xiaoning is extremely important to Mo Ling. The emperor nodded and his eyes shone with a wise glint as he said slowly, on the surface, He Xing's death was due to He Xing attacking first to teach Mo Ling a lesson. However, in reality, it was clear that Mo Ling wanted to stand up for his sister and lured He Xing into attacking first. That was the reason why he killed on the streets. That's right. That He Xing was foolish and did not understand the situation clearly. If he really wanted to teach Mo Ling a lesson, he would have lost his life instead. Perfected Lord Mingzhe shook his head and lamented. The emperor said leisurely, I've pointed out something to him earlier on. I believe he understands. Perfected Lord Mingzhe said, yes, the fact that your majesty did not expose his intentions in front of everyone is a huge favor for him. As for Su Xiaoning's identity, the third princess might know something. Yes, the emperor nodded. Shuai will be back soon as well. Chapter 285. Azure Frost Elixir Workshop. A few female cultivators gathered around Su Xiaoning with excited expressions. Their eyes burned with the flames of gossip as they chattered non-stop. Xiaoning, is that person really your brother? Why haven't I heard you mention him before? What's his name? How old is he? Which sect is he from? Does he have a Dao companion? Why didn't he join Azure Frost sect with you? Xiaoning, look at how close you guys are. Are you his Dao companion? Su Xiaoning frowned slightly and pursed her lips in silence, her eyes filled with worry. Seeing that Su Xiaoning was in low spirits, someone consoled her, Xiaoning, don't be too anxious. It's only been 2 hours. It's still early. I'd advise you to give up. Right then, a female cultivator walked out from the back hall with a murderous look on her face. It was the senior sister of many female cultivators, Yang Yu. Yang Yu sneered, he killed 4 people consecutively in the capital and you're still hoping that he can make it out alive? Dream on. Su Xiaoning took a deep breath and said firmly, my brother promised me that he would definitely come and fetch me. How naive. Yang Yu did not hide the mockery in her eyes. Of the 4 people killed, 2 were disciples of True Fire Elixir Workshop and the other 2 were Scarlet Vulture Guards. Do you think that True Fire Sect and the Scarlet Vulture Guards are pushovers? Who do you think your brother is to be able to fight against those 2 factions? With every sentence that Yang Yu said, Su Xiaoning's face turned paler. She knew in her heart that the chances of Su Zimo making it out of the capital alive were extremely low. However, she was willing to believe in Su Zimo. Yang Yu changed the topic. However, you can't be too full of yourself. In the capital, there are people who have the strength to fight against True Fire Sect and the Scarlet Vulture Guards. For example, Yang Yu purposely kept Su Xiaoning in suspense and waited for her to look expectant before saying slowly, for example, your brother is from the royal family, Fufu. Before she finished, Yang Yu laughed out loud with a mocking look in her eyes. She was completely teasing Su Xiaoning. If Su Zimo was a member of the royal family, how could the commander of the Scarlet Vulture Guards not recognize him? Yang Yu continued, of course, other than the royal family, there's another person in the capital who has enough power to go against True Fire Sect and the Scarlet Vulture Guards. That is. Su Xiaoning knew that Yang Yu was teasing her, but she still had a glimmer of hope. She looked at Yang Yu, waiting for an answer. That is, the #1 weapon refinement master of the Great Zhou dynasty, Mr. Mo. Yang Yu said. Su Xiaoning's eyes dimmed. Yang Yu chuckled and said, let me think. Junior sister Su, could your brother be Mr. Mo? That's not right. Your surname is Su, and Mr. Mo's surname is Mo. There seems to be a bit of a difference. And I heard that Mr. Mo is a Taoist master Jin Dan. Your brother seems to be in the late stage of the foundation establishment realm, hehe. Su Xiaoning said, senior sister Yang, you don't have to be sarcastic and sarcastic. I believe in my brother. He'll definitely return alive. Ha! Yang Yu sneered. If your brother can return alive, Yang Yu. After Yang Yu said that, she glanced over and caught sight of a figure walking over. He was dressed in green robes and had delicate features, walking into the hall slowly. All the cultivators in the hall were stunned on the spot, dumbfounded and shocked. How is that possible? Why you? Yang Yu's mind was in a mess when she looked at the person who had arrived. This person, who was already dead in her heart, was standing right in front of her, alive and kicking. Su Zimo glared at Yang Yu coldly. Continue. What are you going to do if I return alive, huh? Yang Yu felt flustered when Su Zimo glared at her with a sharp gaze. Instinctively, she turned her head away, not daring to meet his gaze as her heart palpitated for no reason. Brother! Su Xiaoning exclaimed with a face filled with joy. Like a swallow returning to its nest, she dove into Su Zimo's embrace and sobbed softly. A gentle look appeared in Su Zimo's eyes as he patted Xiaoning's back gently. Su Zimo supported Xiaoning to the side and walked towards Yang Yu slowly. His expression was cold and his gaze was sharp as a knife, exuding a chilling killing intent. What are you trying to do? This is Azure Frost Elixir Workshop. You're not allowed to act brazenly here. Yang Yu was a little flustered as she hollered fiercely. However, she was retreating instinctively. I even dare to kill in the capital. Do you think that I won't dare to kill in Azure Frost Elixir Workshop? Su Zimo continued approaching with a cold gaze. Yang Yu swallowed a mouthful of saliva as her heart grew increasingly flustered and terrified. Although she was at perfected foundation establishment and was a level higher than Su Zimo, she was completely intimidated by Su Zimo's aura at that moment. Who wouldn't be afraid of someone who dared to go on a killing spree in the capital and even walked out of the palace unscathed? Even perfected being Jean Dan of Azure Frost sect was wary, let alone Yang Yu. Without knowing Su Zimo's identity, no one dared to touch him. Someone who could survive the combined suppression of True Fire's sect and the Scarlet Vulture Guards must have an extremely high status. Who would dare to touch him? Before long, Yang Yu was already leaning against the wall with nowhere to retreat. Do you know why the four of them died? Su Zimo came before Yang Yu and asked with a narrowed gaze. Yang Yu's face was pale as she shook her head. Su Zimo said slowly, that's because they bullied Xiaoning. Furthermore, you bullied her as well. I didn't. Yang Yu's explanation was so weak. Su Zimo changed the topic. However, don't worry, I won't kill you. When she heard that, Yang Yu heaved a long sigh of relief as though she had been pardoned. Unknowingly, her back was already drenched in sweat. A playful look flashed through Su Zimo's eyes as he smiled. The reason why I won't kill you is because someone else will. Yang Yu's heart that had just calmed down started pounding once more. Right then, Su Xiaoning ran over and pulled Su Zimo away. She looked at Yang Yu and said, Senior Sister Yang, does the deal we agreed on previously still count? I'll sell this elixir furnace to you and you'll give me 5,000 superior-grade spirit stones or a superior-grade spirit weapon. With that, Su Xiaoning took out an elixir furnace from her storage bag. This elixir furnace was the reason why He Xing of True Fire's sect coveted it and caused a series of conflicts. After being soaked in Xiaoning's blood, the elixir furnace was already extraordinary. Furthermore, Su Zimo could tell that Xiaoning was extremely fond of this elixir furnace. Why was she selling it now? Xiaoning, why are you selling this furnace? Su Zimo asked in confusion. Su Xiaoning said seriously, Brother, I noticed that you've been empty-handed the entire time. I'm sure you don't have a suitable spirit weapon. If I sell this furnace, I'll have the money to customize a superior-grade spirit weapon for you. Su Zimo's heart warmed as he rubbed Xiaoning's head lovingly and smiled. Hurry and put away the furnace. Su Zimo said in a serious manner, Xiaoning, let me tell you. The reason why I'm empty-handed is not because I don't have any spirit weapons. It's because I have too many, bragging again. Let's go. I'll bring you to my place to take a look. Su Zimo ignored Yang Yu and left True Fire Elixir Workshop with Xiaoning. Chapter 286. By the time they left Azure Frost Elixir Workshop, it was already evening and there were fewer people on the streets. The siblings had not seen each other for a few years and naturally had a lot to talk about. Senior Sister Yang even said that only people from the royal family or Mr. Mo can return safely. Hee, so my brother can do it too. She's not wrong about that. Ah. That's because I'm Mr. Mo, I don't believe you. Su Zimo smiled and did not explain, leading Xiaoning straight to Mo's spirit weapon workshop. Before long, the two of them arrived at the entrance of Mo's spirit weapon workshop. Under Su Xiaoning's confused gaze, Su Zimo knocked on the door of Mo's spirit weapon workshop. Before long, a stunning young girl with yellow hair popped her head out. It was Nian Qi. Young master. When Nian Qi caught sight of Su Zimo, her face was filled with joy as she called out crisply. Yes. Su Zimo nodded and pushed Xiaoning over. This is my sister. You guys can chat. I have something else to do and will be back later. Alright, don't worry, young master. Nian Qi nodded obediently. Su Xiaoning's mouth was agape as she stared at the words Mo Spirit Weapon Workshop on the beam. For a moment, she could not connect Su Zimo with the famous Mr. Mo in the capital. It was only after Su Zimo left and Su Xiaoning was brought to the courtyard by Nian Qi in a daze that she gradually regained her senses. Is my brother really Mr. Mo? Su Xiaoning looked at Nian Qi and asked carefully. That's right. Nian Qi pointed to the big black dog sprawled at the side and smiled. His name is Night Spirit and he's young master's spirit beast. The name Mo Ling was derived from the names of both Young Master and Night Spirit. Night Spirit opened its eyes and glanced at Su Xiaoning indifferently. It did not move and continued to rest. Nian Qi smiled. Night Spirit is like that. Apart from Young Master, it's not close to anyone else. Don't be fooled by its lazy appearance usually. When it's angry, it's really scary. The two of them were about the same age and quickly became familiar with each other. After Dai Su followed the green-robed cultivator out of the capital, he removed his armor and changed into a common robe. He hid in the crowd and followed far behind. Ultimately, he could not be sure that the person he was following was the same man he saw in town a few years ago. After all, the man in the small town was only a mortal who could not cultivate. As for this green-robed man, his cultivation had already reached late-stage foundation establishment. Furthermore, there was no reason for that person to appear in Royal City, let alone in the Royal Palace. How was that? Everything, if they were the same person, there was no. But for some reason, although it was just a quick glance, Dai Su had a strong feeling in his heart. They were the same person. Although that person looked like a frail scholar, his spine was upright at all times, as though nothing in the world could crush him. Dai Su followed behind the green-robed cultivator and saw him enter Azure Frost Elixir Workshop. Not long after, the green-robed cultivator walked out with another female cultivator. When he saw the female cultivator's face, Dai Su no longer had any doubts. The green-robed cultivator was the scholar from that unassuming town in the vassal state back then, Su Zimo. The woman beside him was his younger sister, Su Xiaoning. Back then, she was taken away by the third princess and joined Azure Frost sect to cultivate. Dai Su continued to follow Su Zimo. When he saw Su Xiaoning being sent to Mo's spirit weapon workshop, Dai Su's eyes flickered in deep thought. Su Zimo, Mo Ling, immediately after, Su Zimo left. By the looks of it, he was heading out of the city. Looking at Su Zimo's back view, Dai Su's expression flickered. After pondering for a moment, a killing intent flashed through his eyes and he followed silently. The two of them left the city one after another. After leaving the capital, Su Zimo summoned his flying sword and rode it into the distance. Dai Su followed hurriedly. Before long, Su Zimo entered a dense forest. Su Zimo retracted his flying sword and darted through the forest at an extremely fast speed, as though he was extremely familiar with the place. Turning left and right, his position was erratic. After all, they were in the forest and could not see as clearly as outside. There were too many places to hide and there were blind spots everywhere. Dai Su had no choice but to slow down on his flying sword. Before long, Su Zimo disappeared from Dai Su's sight. Dai Su chased to the place where Su Zimo disappeared and surveyed his surroundings with a grim expression. At that moment, the night was getting darker and the moon was above the willow branches. The beasts in the forest had already started coming out of their caves. The forest was dark and the roars of spirit beasts could be heard from time to time. At other times, the leaves rustled and the air was filled with the stench of blood, eerie and terrifying. Dai Su felt uneasy and took out his golden armor. The moment he put it on, his heart skipped a beat and he turned around. Not far behind him, a green-robed cultivator stood with his hands behind his back. The cold moonlight shone through the dense leaves and landed on his face. The green-robed cultivator had a calm expression with a hint of mockery in his eyes. Su Zimo. Dai Su narrowed his eyes and said word by word. Su Zimo smiled gently. Commander Dai, how have you been? After a few years, you've changed quite a bit. Truly impressive. Dai Su smirked and said coldly, back then, you were just a mere mortal. Now, you're already at late-stage Foundation establishment. Not bad, not bad. Su Zimo replied with a fake smile, I have to thank you for not killing me back then, Commander Dai. Humph. When he heard that, Dai Su harumphed coldly. If not for the fact that Su Zimo was tactful and did not get too close to Ji Yaoshua, Dai Su would have died a few years ago. Although Dai Su hid it well back then, Su Zimo, who possessed spirit perception, sensed Dai Su's killing intent. Commander Dai, why have you followed me all the way here? Su Zimo asked straightforwardly. Su Zimo, if you're smart enough, you should stay away from the capital and the third princess. Dai Su said slowly with a murderous expression, now that you've appeared in the capital, I can only say that you have a death wish. As he said that, Dai Su withdrew a flying sword from his storage bag. Su Zimo smiled. Commander Dai, you're not telling the truth. Dai Su did not say anything. Su Zimo continued, that's not the only reason why you want to kill me. It's also because you've guessed my identity and want to kill me for my treasures, right? Huh. Dai Su reared his head in laughter. You're smart. However, you're still going to die today. Su Zimo raised his brows slightly and asked instead, when I left the palace, I already discovered that you were following me. However, do you know why I chose to leave the city directly? You wanted to hunt me down. Dai Su laughed. Su Zimo, you were confident enough to lure me into this sparsely populated forest to hunt me down. I had the same intentions as well. Su Zimo nodded. That's right. Dai Su said coldly, there's nothing much to say then. Let's see how much you've improved in the past few years. Chapter 287. This time round, both of them were filled with killing intent. Furthermore, both of them were confident that they could kill the other party. That was the reason why Su Zimo lured Dai Su out of the capital. Even though Dai Su knew that Su Zimo was doing it on purpose, he chased after him fearlessly as well. The two of them were each other's prey. The only thing that mattered was who had the stronger methods. Channeling his spirit energy, Dai Su's body shone with a bright light as a spirit meridian appeared, emitting a bedazzling glow. You're only at late-stage Foundation establishment while I'm a meridian cultivator. What are you going to use to fight me? Sneering coldly, Dai Su channeled his spirit energy and the flying sword in his hands buzzed as 3 spirit patterns shone. Superior grade spirit weapon. Show. A sword beam tore through the void and sped toward Su Zimo. At the same time, Dai Su waved his sleeves and conjured hand seals. He hollered and pointed forward. Roar! A deafening roar sounded out of nowhere. A spirit demon formed from spirit energy appeared in the void. With a menacing expression, it reared its head and roared into the skies, emitting a shocking killing intent as it charged toward Su Zimo. The flying sword and spirit art arrived at the same time. Su Zimo's expression was unchanged as he interlocked his thumb and middle finger, forming a strange hand seal before pushing it forward slowly. Fiend Suppression Seal. There was no probing. The moment he attacked, Su Zimo released the strongest spirit art he had learned. The spirit energy in his dantian surged wildly into the hand seal that Su Zimo conjured. Boom! Accompanied by a loud bang, a gigantic golden palm descended from the skies. It tore through the firmaments and crushed the air currents, crushing towards the spirit demon and flying sword in a terrifying manner. Dai Su's expression changed. He could clearly see that the gigantic golden palm seemed to be formed from spirit energy. However, it was corporeal, as though it was the palm of a god that had descended from the heavens to suppress all evil in the world. Bang! In midair, the ferocious roaring spirit demon collided with the giant golden palm. Immediately, cracks appeared on its body. In the blink of an eye, it dissipated in midair. Dai Su's expression changed. Under normal circumstances, given his spirit energy of a single Meridian Foundation establishment, the spirit art he conjured would definitely be able to defeat a late-stage Foundation establishment cultivator with ease. But now, the situation was exactly the opposite. There was only one possibility. His opponent's spirit art was extremely powerful, far more powerful than his own. In midair, Dai Su's flying sword was pressed against the center of the giant golden palm, unable to move an inch. Moreover, the sword was trembling and bending. Its spiritual energy was unstable and showed signs of collapsing. It seemed that it would not be able to hold on any longer. Dai Su sneered, and the spiritual energy in his body began to circulate again. Whoosh! Another beam of spiritual light shot out from Dai Su's golden armor. 2 spiritual veins. The spirit-peering art would not be able to detect how many meridians a Foundation establishment cultivator had opened unless the cultivator revealed it himself. But now, Dai Su had already revealed 2 spirit meridians. Spiritual energy surged in the 2 spiritual veins with a majestic aura. Dai Su controlled the flying sword, causing it to shine brightly as its strength rose rapidly. The sword's blade was straight and sharp as it blocked the gigantic golden palm. No matter how strong the Fiend Suppression Seal was, there was a limit to it and it could not make up for the difference in their cultivation realms. Su Zimo, if that's all you're capable of, this day next year will be the anniversary of your death. The fact that Dai Su could still divert his attention to speak in such an intense clash of strength was proof that he still had some strength left. Su Zimo did not reply and had a calm expression. Dai Su was not using his full strength and Su Zimo had a backup plan as well. Break! Right then, another beam of spiritual light shone from Dai Su's body as he hollered. A 3rd spirit meridian. The power of 3 spirit meridians burst forth at the same time and the flying sword in midair shone brightly. Both parties were in a stalemate for a moment. With a poof, the flying sword pierced through the gigantic golden palm and did not stop, piercing toward Su Zimo's head. The moment Dai Su revealed his 3rd spirit meridian, Su Zimo had already realized that it would be difficult for him to kill Dai Su given his cultivation realm and immortal cultivation methods. The gigantic golden palm was pierced and cracks appeared on its surface, it was about to collapse. Shoo! The sword beam was piercingly cold and came at an extremely fast speed. However, Su Zimo's reaction was even faster. Almost at the same moment the flying sword pierced through the gigantic golden palm, Su Zimo moved and left his original spot, leaving behind a series of afterimages. Swoosh! Like a ferocious horse, Su Zimo arrived in front of Dai Su in almost the blink of an eye. After using Divine Steed Fleeting, Su Zimo changed his move at the last minute. He took a huge step forward and used the stance of Plow Heaven Stride. Boom! The moment he took a step forward, the earth quaked and the mountains shook. Su Zimo's aura surged. Su Zimo's eyes lit up and shone with a maniacal killing intent. He suddenly reached out with both hands and grabbed Dai Su's arms. Then, he bent his knees and charged forward. Divine Steed Dismemberment. With the burst of Divine Steed Fleeting, he shortened the distance and closed in. With the help of Plow Heaven Stride, he released a soaring aura. Coupled with divine steed dismemberment, the entire process was as smooth as flowing water without any sluggishness. As long as Dai Su's arms were locked down by Su Zimo, he would definitely die. The burst of divine steed fleeting and Plow Heaven Stride, coupled with the power of divine steed dismemberment, was enough to rip Dai Su into pieces. Against Su Zimo's storm-like attacks, a look of panic flashed through Dai Su's eyes. However, he calmed down instantly. Ah! Dai Su roared and the spirit light on the surface of his body shone once more. Boom! The fourth spirit meridian appeared. The fifth. The sixth. In the blink of an eye, 6 spirit meridians appeared on the surface of Dai Su's body. Dai Su's aura surged and his spirit energy was rich as he entered a berserk state. 6 Meridian Foundation Establishment. There were not many Foundation Establishment cultivators who could unlock 6 spirit meridians out of the 8 extraordinary meridians. Furthermore, not every meridian had the same difficulty. The further one went, the harder it was. Unless one entered the ancient battlefield and obtained an even greater opportunity, unlocking 6 meridians was almost the limit in Tianhuang mainland. Initially, Dai Su did not use his full strength. That was because in his opinion, Su Zimo was only at late-stage foundation establishment and his cultivation realm was far inferior to his. There was no need for him to do so. The outcome of this battle was already decided. But now, after Su Zimo released such a domineering attack, Dai Su realized that this battle was not as simple as he had imagined. The spirit energy of all 6 meridians burst forth instantly. You must have a death wish. Dai Su's gaze was ferocious as he clasped his hands in front of him, forming a gigantic ball of spirit energy that blocked in front of Su Zimo. The ball of spirit energy contained almost all of Dai Su's strength and was not to be underestimated. Su Zimo narrowed his eyes. If Dai Su was only at 3 or even 4 Meridian Foundation establishment, Su Zimo was confident that he could kill the latter with the burst of his physique. But now that Dai Su had released the power of 6 Meridian Foundation establishment, Su Zimo could not take him head-on with just his physique alone. At that moment, the combination of Divine Steed Fleeting and Plow Heaven Stride caused Su Zimo's momentum to be too ferocious and it was too late for him to change his move. Channeling the bloodline. Rumble. Splash. A terrifying sound echoed from Su Zimo's body. It sounded like rumbling thunder and surging tides with a terrifying might. Chapter 288. The blood was like a tide, and the sound was like thunder. At that moment, Su Zimo who was charging over resembled a divine steed shimmering with lightning with a tsunami behind him. Boom! Su Zimo's knee collided against Dai Su's ball of spirit energy with a deafening bang. A gigantic halo of spirit energy burst forth from the center of the collision in a bedazzling manner, illuminating the surroundings as though it was daytime. The ball of light exploded and a berserk spirit energy was released. The spirit energy of a 6 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator was extremely dense and Su Zimo's body was repelled instantly, flipping a few times in midair before landing on the ground slowly. Dai Su staggered a few steps back and his feet sank deep into the mud before he managed to stabilize himself. They were evenly matched. This was a head-on clash without much technique involved. The spirit energy of a 6 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator was completely capable of going against the power of bloodline released by Su Zimo. Although Su Zimo had killed a perfected Jin Dan personally on that night a few months ago, he knew that neither he nor Night Spirit would be a match for perfected Jin Dan in a one-on-one fight. The reason why Su Zimo lured Dai Su here was partly because he wanted to kill the latter. At the same time, Su Zimo wanted to see how strong his demonic cultivation was and what cultivation realm he could go up against. To put it simply, Su Zimo viewed Dai Su as a whetstone. With that single clash just now, Su Zimo understood. Now that he had attained greater mastery of the organ's refinement section, the power he could release with his bloodline was enough to take on a 6 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator head-on without being disadvantaged. Dai Su retrieved an elixir with his left hand and swallowed it. Controlling his flying sword with his right hand, he glared at Su Zimo and panted slightly. Although Dai Su looked calm on the surface, his heart was surging with stormy waves. Initially, he had thought that Su Zimo was only at late-stage foundation establishment. Given his 6 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivation, killing Su Zimo would be as easy as killing a chicken. But now, Dai Su suddenly realized that Su Zimo's real trump card was his extremely terrifying physical body and close combat strength. Blood like a tidal wave? This was an illusory realm in the legends. How could someone really cultivate it? Even ancient ferocious beasts might not be able to successfully cultivate it, right? The pill that he had just swallowed had already turned into a rich spiritual energy that surged between the 6 spirit veins, replenishing the spiritual energy that he had consumed earlier. Whoosh! Dai Su was the first to make a move. He pointed his finger forward and the flying sword turned into a streak of rainbow light and sped away. In a flash, Su Zimo avoided the flying sword by a hair's breadth. Ta! Ta! In just a few steps, Su Zimo had already arrived in front of Dai Su. Dai Su's expression was unchanged as he conjured a hand seal, conjuring a spirit energy sword in front of him and stabbing toward Su Zimo's face in reverse. At the same time, the superior-grade flying sword that was initially in midair turned around and arrived behind Su Zimo. Break it! Roaring, Su Zimo's bloodline surged as he swung his arm, drawing a semicircle in midair. Using his fist as a seal, he slammed down heavily against the incoming spirit energy sword. Snap! A crack appeared on the spirit energy sword and extended rapidly, covering the entire sword. Dai Su shuddered and a look of shock flashed through his eyes. At the same time, Su Zimo did not even turn back or look. Instead, he twitched his arm in reverse and placed it gently on the incoming flying sword like an elephant's trunk. One coil and one tremble. The spirit energy on the superior-grade flying sword dissipated and in the blink of an eye, it landed in Su Zimo's palm. Swash! Without stopping, Su Zimo snatched the superior-grade flying sword and stabbed it towards Dai Su's head. Ah! Exclaiming, Dai Su exerted strength in his legs and leaped up. Clang! The superior-grade flying sword struck Dai Su's armor in front of his chest. The golden armor on Dai Su's body shone with 3 spirit patterns and released a strong defensive power. The flying sword merely pierced through it and found it difficult to advance any further. It was a superior-grade defensive armor. Dai Su had a horrified expression and broke out in cold sweat. Just now, even though they had only exchanged a single blow, he would have been a dead man if not for the golden armor on his body. Kill! Dai Su hollered and conjured a spirit art with both hands, sending it toward Su Zimo who was right in front of him. Bang! Bang! Waving his fists, Su Zimo dispersed the incoming spirit energy with 2 punches and paused for a moment. Dai Su took advantage of the collision of the 2 forces and retreated rapidly. He took out a flying sword and leaped into the air, speeding in the direction of Royal City. Realizing that he was not a match for Su Zimo, Dai Su made a prompt decision and chose to escape without hesitation. There was no way Su Zimo would allow Dai Su to return alive as he chased after him. The 2 of them shuttled through the forest in pursuit, alarming countless birds and beasts. Gritting his teeth, Dai Su circulated the spirit energy in his dantian furiously. It was almost at its limits and even his dantian was aching. He knew that he would definitely die if Su Zimo caught up to him. The difference in their cultivation realms was not small and there was a huge difference in the speed of sword kinesis flight as well. As long as he could leave this forest, Su Zimo would not be able to catch up to him no matter what methods he had. Su Zimo shuttled through the forest and his bloodline surged endlessly. At the same time, he was already at his limits and was getting closer to Dai Su. Su Zimo's gaze was calm as he glared at Dai Su's back view coldly. The edge of the forest was not far ahead. He had to kill Dai Su before the latter escaped from the forest. A demonic glint shone in Su Zimo's eyes as he reared his head and howled. Suddenly, an extremely terrifying aura burst forth from his body and filled the forest, It was enough to make all beasts bow down. This was something even more terrifying than the power of bloodline, the power of blood chi. Within the scarlet fog, Su Zimo's figure was faintly discernible. His eyes were pitch black like ink, and he was like a peerless demon that walked in the darkness, chasing after prey that was not far away. Suddenly, Dai Su felt his heart skip a beat. It was as though he was being targeted by an ancient ferocious beast. His scalp tingled as though there were thorns on his back. Instinctively, Dai Su turned back. If he and Ning could form their cores, Su Hong's lifespan would only be slightly more than 100 years, and he would definitely be ahead of them. Perhaps, no one would be able to understand the kinship between the three of them. Even though Su Zimo and Xiaoning were already on the path of cultivation, they still had a deep sense of dependence and attachment towards Su Hong in the depths of their hearts. Back then, if not for Su Hong, the two of them would not have survived. Ever since Su Zimo and Ning could remember, they had never met their parents. In their hearts, Su Hong was like their parent. Ning said in a daze, "I know that we'll have to go through all of this eventually and experience the separation of life and death. However, I want that moment to come later. I heard that some incredible elixir refinement masters can refine elixirs that can extend one's lifespan. That's why I want to give it a try. Even if it's a year, a month or a day longer, it'll be good." Su Zimo was moved. Reaching out, he hugged the teary-eyed Ning gently in his embrace without saying anything. Most cultivators cultivated the Tao for the sake of longevity and foresight. Su Zimo had never heard of elixirs that could extend one's lifespan. Even if such an elixir formula existed in this world, the requirements to refine it would be unimaginably harsh. However, despite knowing that, Ning still chose to embark on the path of an elixir refinement master. Even if such an elixir only existed in legends, she had to give it a try for the sake of that tiny bit of hope in her heart. Suddenly, Su Zimo understood something. It was not a coincidence that Ning had such achievements in elixir refinement. This kind of obsession was not something that everyone possessed. A moment later, Su Zimo asked again, "What's up with that elixir furnace of yours?" Xiaoning stood up and took out the exquisite and quaint elixir furnace. Placing it on the table, she said, "I saw it at a stall in Yongqing City. At that time, I didn't think much of it. It just looked rather old and there was nothing special about it. However, when I picked it up, I had an inexplicable feeling. Therefore, I bought it, and He Xing of True Fire Elixir Workshop happened to see it." Su Zimo looked at the elixir furnace in deep thought. Ning continued, "Later on, when I brought this elixir furnace with me to refine elixirs, I realized something different. As long as I bring this elixir furnace with me, my mental energy will be extremely focused when I refine elixirs. Unless something major happens, it's hard for me to be distracted." Realization dawned on Su Zimo. It was no wonder why Ning was in a perfect state and focused state during the elixir battle yesterday. So, this mysterious elixir furnace played a part in that. "Put it away," Su Zimo instructed. "No matter what, don't give this elixir furnace to anyone else. Keep it for yourself. I have a feeling that this elixir furnace has a great background. It could affect a person's mental state with just an inanimate object." Even with Su Zimo's capabilities, he could not refine an elixir furnace as such. "Yes." Ning nodded. Su Zimo pondered for a moment before continuing, "From today onwards, you'll cultivate here with me first. You can return when the sect competition is around." Many things had happened yesterday, and Su Zimo was truly worried about Ning staying in Azure Frost Elixir Workshop. Furthermore, Su Zimo intended to make use of the final month to help Ning raise her cultivation realm. Ning had a pseudo-spirit root and her cultivation speed was the slowest. Therefore, Su Zimo drew some support formations for Ning that could help her absorb spirit chi better. All of them were superior-grade spirit stones. Most perfected Jin Dan cultivators only use superior-grade spirit stones for their cultivation. However, Su Zimo's plan was simple. He was going to use superior-grade spirit stones. That was because he did not lack spirit stones the most right now. Chapter 290. As the time for the sect competition approached, the number of cultivators that arrived in the capital gradually increased and major sects had already led their disciples here. Among them, Iridescent Clouds Palace, True Fire Sect, Azure Frost Sect and Southern Mountains Sect of the 5 major sects had already sent perfected Jean Dan to the capital. Although they were also part of the 5 major sects, Misty Peak had yet to send any disciples. Many cultivators had expected this to happen. 3 years ago, news of the battle at Dongling Valley spread and everyone heard about it. It was said that the battle was extremely tragic and almost all of the Paragon disciples of Misty Peak at Foundation Establishment Realm were killed. In fact, Misty Peak even lost a few perfected Jean Dan disciples. It was almost impossible to nurture Foundation Establishment cultivators that were qualified to compete for the spirit ranking within 3 years. Prior to this, Misty Peak could take up at least 3 of the 10 spots on the spirit ranking. But now, Misty Peak had already lost the qualifications to compete for the spirit ranking that they had the most advantage over. However, no Misty Peak disciple had ever left their names on the elixir and weapon rankings. Misty Peak only had a slight chance of making it on the talisman ranking. However, it was still extremely slim. Therefore, to everyone, it was even possible that Misty Peak would choose to give up on the sect competition. Palace, Rain Admiration Pavilion. A man and woman stood side by side. The man wore long yellow robes and had his hands behind his back. His forehead was wide and his gaze was wise. He was the emperor of the Great Zhou dynasty. The woman beside him was wearing a light yellow dress that trailed along the ground. A ribbon was tied around her waist, perfectly accentuating her exquisite figure. She was extremely beautiful and had a graceful and elegant aura. She was the 3rd princess of the Great Zhou dynasty and the daughter of the emperor, Ji Yaoxue. "Why didn't you come back earlier?" the emperor asked. Ji Yaoxue lowered her head in silence. Frowning slightly, the emperor glanced sideways and asked, "Are you still blaming me?" "I wouldn't dare." Ji Yaoxue shook her head gently and said calmly. The emperor sighed helplessly. "Shui, you have to know that I will definitely not harm you. If there's anyone in this world who's wholeheartedly for your good, it's me." "I know. Father, you must be doing this for my own good." Ji Yaoxue turned around and looked at the emperor with an indifferent gaze. "However, I've already grown up and there are many things that I wish to decide for myself." "How are you going to make your own decision? Do you really want to become Dao companions with a mortal?" The emperor frowned as he looked at the stubborn Ji Yaoxue. Suddenly, he felt enraged and could not help but raise his voice. 100 years later, you will be in your prime but he will already be in his twilight years. How are you going to face him? Have you ever thought about these problems? Seeing that the emperor was enraged, Ji Yaoxue shut his mouth and stopped arguing with him. Taking a deep breath of air, the emperor composed himself and suddenly said, "A few days ago, I customized a supreme-grade flying sword for you. It's completely customized according to the weight and shape you're used to. Go and get it yourself." "A supreme-grade flying sword? And custom-made?" Ji Yaoxue was slightly taken aback. However, in the blink of an eye, Ji Yaoxue reacted and asked probingly, "Is it Mo's Spirit Weapon Workshop?" "You've heard of Mo's Spirit Weapon Workshop as well?" The emperor raised his brows slightly and turned to ask. "Yes," Ji Yaoxue nodded. "In the past year, Mo's Spirit Weapon Workshop's reputation has already spread to our sect. In the territory of the Great Zhou dynasty, there are probably not many people who haven't heard of Mo's Spirit Weapon Workshop." Ji Yaoxue's sudden agitation coupled with the 2 sentences she said just now aroused the emperor's suspicions. Su Xiaoning? Someone from the Su family? How could a disciple of Azure Frost sect be related to someone from the Su family? Could there really be such a coincidence in this world? The emperor of Great Zhou's expression kept changing and was uncertain. He had a feeling that there was a secret right before his eyes and he was just short of poking through that window paper. All of a sudden, The emperor's heart skipped a beat as he recalled something. A few years ago, the deputy commander of the imperial army who accompanied Ji Yaoxue to Pingyang town of Yan country had returned and reported that the Su family had 2 sons and a daughter. If this Su Xiaoning was this woman, then, the brother she acknowledged in the capital. Chapter 291. Mo Ling, Su Zimo, frowning, the emperor fell into deep thought. How was that possible? Even though the truth was out, the emperor was still unwilling to believe it. How could 2 completely different images in his heart turn into the same person in the end? After pondering for a moment, the emperor called out in a deep voice, "Men." Before long, 2 guards appeared and knelt on one knee with respectful expressions, awaiting the emperor's orders. Go and get the deputy commander of the imperial army, Dai Su. The emperor did not know much about the situation of the Su family and intended to ask Dai Su again. When they heard the emperor's words, the 2 guards froze and exchanged glances with troubled expressions. However, they did not leave immediately. What's wrong? The emperor glared. The 2 guards shuddered and one of them said hurriedly, Your Majesty, Deputy Commander Dai died more than 10 days ago and his corpse was found in a forest dozens of kilometers away from the capital. Dead? The emperor's eyes narrowed with a cold glint. The other guard said, Deputy Commander Dai's throat was shattered. By the looks of it, it was crushed by the claws of a demon beast. Initial judgment is that he was attacked by a spirit beast. The emperor asked expressionlessly, Is his storage bag still around? It's gone. The emperor sneered, the fact that his storage bag is gone means that he must have been killed by someone. Although spirit demons possessed intelligence, they could not open the storage bags of cultivators and it was meaningless for them to take away the storage bags. The death of an imperial army deputy commander was not a big deal in the palace and typically, the emperor would not hear of it. Even if he did, he could not be bothered about the death of a Foundation establishment cultivator. But now that he received this news, the emperor vaguely felt that something was amiss. It was too much of a coincidence. After pondering for a moment, the emperor said in a deep voice, Go and summon the imperial army that accompanied the 3rd princess to Pingyang town of Yan country a few years ago. Also, summon the imperial army that was patrolling the palace with Dai Su before he died. Understood. The 2 guards retreated. People came and went on the long street. 2 of the cultivators walked among the crowd, attracting the attention of many cultivators. Their gazes contained traces of respect and fear. Do you see that? Their robes, the emblem on their sleeves, and the sect medallions on their waists indicate that they are cultivators from one of the 5 great sects, the Southern Mountains sect. The one in front should be perfected Yun Shan of the Southern Mountains sect. The young man behind him should be the #1 Foundation establishment cultivator of the Southern Mountains sect. His name is Shi Jian. I've heard that Shi Jian is very powerful and has already unlocked 5 spirit meridians. It's enough for him to fight for a spot on the spirit ranking. Not long after, the 2 of them were submerged in the crowd. Soon, another female cultivator walked out of the crowd, causing the crowd to whisper. Look, that looks like Adept Yi Ning of the Azure Frost sect. Yes, it really is her. Although she's a little older, she still looks as beautiful as ever. Looks like the Azure Frost sect will be led by Daoist Master Yi Ning. Not long after, Daoist Yi Ning gradually disappeared into the distance under everyone's gaze. Not long after, another 3 cultivators walked over. The leader was a person in green robes who was at the Jin Dan realm. With one hand behind his back, his eyes were long and narrow. His gaze was sharp and cold as he walked over slowly. Behind that person, a man and woman walked side by side. Both of them were Foundation establishment cultivators. The man was extraordinarily handsome and his eyes were like stars. With a smile on his face, he was chatting softly with the woman beside him. The woman wore a light green dress and was only in her 20s. Her skin was whiter than snow and she exuded a gentle aura. Look, the 3 of them are from Iridescent Cloud's palace. If I'm not wrong, the green-robed cultivator in the lead should be perfected being Song Lang of Iridescent Cloud's palace. It's said that he's extremely strong and has even cultivated an extremely powerful Jin Dan phenomenon. He's one of the top experts of the Jin Dan realm. The handsome man behind him is Si Yutong. He should be here to fight for a spot on the spirit ranking. It's said that he has already unlocked 5 spirit meridians and can be considered as a paragon of Iridescent Cloud's palace's foundation establishment realm. That woman seems to be called Meng Qi or something. She looks pretty good. If she can be brought along by perfected being Song Lang and stand side by side with Si Yutong, her strength shouldn't be too bad either. Amidst everyone's discussions, the three of them gradually walked away. Look at the cultivators from the Southern Mountains sect, Azure Frost sect, and Iridescent Cloud's palace. They seem to be heading in the same direction. Could something big have happened over there? At this moment, someone reacted and asked. You don't even know about that? Mo's Spirit Weapon Workshop is holding an auction at the beginning of the month today. The cultivators of the 3 major sects must be there to customize supreme-grade spirit weapons. When he heard the discussions at the side, the handsome man from Iridescent Cloud's palace, Si Yutong, smiled. Junior sister, look. Mo's Spirit Weapon Workshop's auction at the beginning of every month is a rare event in the capital. Yes. Chen Mengqi nodded with a look of shock in her eyes. Along the way, almost all the cultivators were discussing Mo's Spirit Weapon Workshop's auction today. Furthermore, they were not the only ones. It was said that even Southern Mountains sect and Azure Frost sect were participating in this auction. The fact that a weapon refinement master could wield such power in the capital, almost to the point of being able to summon the wind and rain, had already convinced Chen Mengqi completely. Even someone as strong as her master, perfected being Song Lang, did not have such influence. Chen Mengqi yearned and said, I wonder what this Mr. Mo looks like. It would be great if I had the chance to befriend him. That's difficult. Si Yutong shook his head. It's said that very few people have been able to meet Mr. Mo in the 3 years since Mo's Spirit Weapon Workshop opened. Not to mention befriending him, even having the opportunity to meet Mr. Mo is worth bragging about for a while. Chen Mengqi pursed her lips and smiled, feeling a little disappointed. Si Yutong consoled her, however, don't worry, junior sister. Master is here for the supreme grade spirit weapon this time round. Chapter 292. So many people. Ji Yaoshua looked at the dense crowd in front of her in surprise. Even though she had long heard of Mo's Spirit Weapon Workshop's reputation, she had not expected that the auction at the beginning of the month would attract so many cultivators. Yaoshua, you might not know this, but it's said that this auction might be the last one. The person who spoke was dressed in spotless white robes. It was the commander of the White Hawk Guards, Bai Yuhan. The two of them had an extremely good relationship and addressed each other casually in private. Last one? Ji Yaoshua was confused. Bai Yuhan explained, yes, I heard that Mr. Mo will be leaving the capital after the sect competition. Those perfected beings Jin Dan are probably worried that they won't have another chance like this after Mr. Mo leaves. Pausing for a moment, Bai Yuhan swept her gaze across the crowd not far away. Look over there. Perfected beings Jin Dan of Iridescent Cloud's palace, Southern Mountains sect and Azure Frost sect are all here. I reckon that the auction this time round will be especially intense. Ji Yaoshua nodded. She was a little distracted and there was a hint of worry between her brows. Bai Yuhan noticed Ji Yaoshua's odd behavior and whispered, why? Is there something on your mind? Ji Yaoshua lowered her head in silence. Did you quarrel with the king because of that Su Zimo? Bai Yuhan asked again. Yes. Ji Yaoshua replied without hiding anything. A few years ago, Ji Yaoshua had told Bai Yuhan about this matter. Bai Yuhan said, the reason why the king asked you to retrieve this supreme-grade flying sword is probably because he wants you to get to know Mr. Mo, right? Ji Yaoshua nodded and hesitated for a moment before asking, Sister Bai, what do you think? Me? Bai Yuhan smiled. Even though I've never met that Su Zimo, I've met Mr. Mo. I'm sure that Su Zimo can't compare to Mr. Mo. In the Rain Admiration Pavilion, the green-robed cultivator was neither servile nor overbearing. In the face of the pressure from True Fire's sect and the Scarlet Vulture Guards, he was still calm and composed. The scene of him reversing the situation with a few words left a deep impression on Bai Yuhan. Ji Yaoshua frowned. Bai Yuhan said, "Yaoshua, you might not believe me when I say this, but you'll definitely be able to tell that Mr. Mo is different from the rest when you meet him." Ji Yaoshua said faintly, "We'll see." Perfected Being Song Lang placed his hands behind his back and puffed out his chest. His gaze was cold as he led his two disciples, Si Yutong and Chen Mengqi, towards the crowd, exuding a sharp aura. Many people sensed something and subconsciously looked over. Iridescent Cloud's palace was one of the 5 major sections. Furthermore, Perfected Being Song Lang was a well-known ruthless character. Although it was crowded, many cultivators still had some misgivings and opened up a path. Before long, Perfected Being Song Lang and the other two had already reached the front of the crowd. In the first row, apart from Perfected Being Song Lang and the other two, there was also Perfected Being Yun Shan of Southern Mountains sect and his legacy disciple, Shi Jian. The last one was Perfected Being Yi Ning of Azure Frost sect. "I'm determined to get the supreme grade spirit weapon this time round. Fellow Taoists, please don't fight." Perfected Being Song Lang glanced sideways. Although his tone was calm, there was an unquestionable tone. "Fu-fu." Perfected Being Yun Shan laughed. "Song Lang, your words are meaningless. You're determined to get it and so am I." Thereafter, Perfected Being Yun Shan turned around and asked, "What do you say, fellow Taoist Yi Ning?" "Nothing much. Since it's an auction, everyone should compete fairly. There's nothing much to say." Perfected Being Yi Ning had prepared for a long time for the bid for the supreme grade spirit weapon this time round as well. There was naturally no way she would leave just because of a single sentence from Perfected Being Song Lang. Perfected Being Song Lang sneered and did not say anything else. Creak. Right then, a crack appeared on the door of Mo's spirit weapon workshop. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Countless gazes landed on the door of Mo's spirit weapon workshop with excitement and anticipation in their eyes. A woman darted out of the door. Her hair was yellow and curly and messy. However, she was so beautiful that one would instinctively overlook that flaw. "Fellow Taoist Nian Qi, you're finally out. Fellow Taoist Nian Qi, you've become prettier again," a perfected being of Jin Dan said shamelessly. "Fellow Taoist Nian Qi, it's me. Cough, cough, I'm here again." Any cultivator who had stayed in the capital for a year or so would know that Mr. Mo would not appear for each auction and Nian Qi would always be the one hosting it. Although Nian Qi was dressed as a maidservant and was at Foundation establishment, none of the perfected being of Jin Dan present dared to underestimate her. Nian Qi did not say anything first and pressed down with both hands. Instantly, the initially noisy scene quietened down. There were more than 10,000 cultivators present and more than 1,000 of them were perfected being of Jin Dan. However, a simple gesture from the maidservant caused everyone to quieten down. When she saw that, Shen Mengqi's eyes revealed a look of envy. If a maidservant possessed such capabilities, how extraordinary must her master be? Since there are many unfamiliar fellow Taoists here today, I'll simply repeat the rules of the auction. Bidders can collect a number from me later and prepare 30 sets of materials. The starting price is 500,000 superior grade spirit stones and each increment must not be less than 10,000. The highest bidder wins. With that said, Nian Qi took out a bunch of jade badges with numbers from her storage bag and scattered them in midair. Perfected Being Song Lang waved his sleeves and snatched the number 1 badge. Perfected Being Yun Shan obtained the number 2 badge and Perfected Being Yi Ning obtained the number 3 badge. The other badges with numbers were taken away by the many perfected being of Jin Dan behind the 3 of them as well. Although there were more than 10,000 people present, most of them were disciples brought here by perfected being Jin Dan. The true bidders were the thousands of perfected being of Jin Dan present. Let the auction officially begin. The moment Nian Qi's voice was finished, someone in the crowd had already raised their paddles to bid. In an alley not far away from the crowd, an exquisite carriage was parked. 2 women sat in the carriage. One of them was voluptuous and curvaceous, exuding a mature and seductive aura. The other woman wore a long pink dress and had a veil covering her face. However, when she blinked her eyes, it was as though there were ripples in them that could move one's soul. Auntie Goo, what's the background of this Mo Ling? He's snatching away the business of Sky Treasure Auction House with a single auction. The girl in pink frowned slightly with a hint of anger and curiosity in her tone. I'm not sure, the mature woman addressed as Auntie Goo shook her head. I heard from father that he's a young man in his early 20s. Father has high praises for him and thinks highly of him, the girl in pink said in a low voice. Why? Even the Missy of our lust sect is interested in him? Auntie Goo looked at the girl in pink with a fake smile and asked teasingly. Tisk, the girl in pink pouted her lips in disdain. Raising her chin, she said confidently, if I were to appear, all I have to do is beckon with my finger and that Mo Ling would grovel at my feet obediently. You're tuning into the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.